The story begins as dusk fell over the city. The dark blue starry sky was reflected in the mirrored wall of the hotel. By the front entrance, it was as bright as daylight. The signs on the doors of the rooms were polished to a shine. The girl stopped in front of room number 5634. Already at the door handle, Amelia Yu paused and checked the business card. It was really here. Remaining in her red t-shirt and black panties, the girl smiled at her partner. Lin Dan was glad for the opportunity to be with her. He sat down next to her on the bed and cheerfully announced that he was going to enjoy spending the evening with the girl tonight. Amelia Yu pulled back a little. She took a glass of red wine in her hands and asked not to be so impatient. The girl smiled slyly and suggested a little drink to start with. Lin Dan was a little surprised, but agreed with her. The young man knew that good red wine had never hurt anyone, and he set an example by draining his glass to the bottom. Amelia Yu warily looked at the cheerful young man. There was no hint of joy in her eyes right now. The girl had a definite goal in mind. Amelia Yu faintly smiled at the thought of her imminent retribution. She jumped off the bed and poured her companion another glass of wine, then surreptitiously retrieved a bottle from her hiding place. It was a fast-acting drug. In combination with alcohol, it had a strong sedative effect, and people fell asleep immediately. Everything worked properly. A moment later, Lin Dan was already snoring on the bed. The girl leaned over the young man, searching his clothes. Finally, Amelia Yu smiled gleefully and clutched the coveted item in her hand. The portable storage device gleamed in the light of the lamp. Wasting no time, the girl immediately opened her laptop and plugged in the drive. She had to check the information. Lin Dan was stirring in his sleep. His feet were on the floor, and it seemed like the young man was about to fall off and wake up. However, Amelia Yu didn't pay any attention to the room master. She had plenty of time to spare. She knew from the dossier on the young man that Lin Dan was luring girls to his place and blackmailing them with nude photos afterward. After finishing her work, Amelia Yu called and said that the target was confirmed as a playboy. She asked to pick it up. The job was done. The girl quickly put on the red dress and took the white card with her, throwing it on as she went. A red car was waiting for Amelia at the hotel entrance. She sat behind the wheel, thinking about her purpose in life. Her tinted glasses were folded on the dashboard. After thinking for a moment, Amelia Yu put on her glasses as well. She felt more confident in them. Amelia's purpose in life was simple and straightforward. She wanted nothing more than to rid the world of an invasion of playboys. Suddenly the girl's cell phone vibrated. Its front panel had a delicate golden hue. Amelia Yu grudgingly glanced at the screen of her phone. It was not even half an hour before she was given a new task. The subscriber congratulated the girl on the successful completion of the mission. The details of the new mission have already been sent to her email. At that time, Amelia was just approaching one of the intersections outside of town. The traffic light turned red. It was just as well. The girl herself already wanted to stop the car and familiarize herself with the mission in more detail. The assignment was very urgent. Her new target had a solid social standing and was named John Feng. From the news bulletin, the girl learned that John Feng is immensely rich. He is the CEO of an investment company. Looking through the company's history, Amelia Yu learned that John Feng had changed 7 assistants in the past 6 months. What's more, the position was still vacant. The man fired them after the girls confessed their feelings to him. All of them suffered from various mental disorders. Amelia frowned and said that John Feng had dug his own grave. The girl slammed the laptop shut. Everything was clear. John Feng had broken the hearts of 7 women and should be punished. The next morning, Amelia Yu drove her car to Jian Tian's headquarters at 10 o'clock in the morning. There were quite a few girls who wanted to become John Feng's assistant, and so they shortened their time in the waiting room. All 4 were beauties in snow-white shirts and black miniskirts. Suddenly, it turned out that they were not the only ones to make it to the finals. There was another contender for Mr. Feng's assistant position, and she really stood out among them with her fiery hair color. In addition, Amelia Yu had a very different figure, and was different from the unassuming girls because of that. She stood pensively at the window looking at her parked red car at the price of a nice apartment. Amelia Yu didn't pay attention to the idle chatter of the girls who had barely finished high school. The girls admired her looks. The 4 candidates huddled together, and one of them began to tell me that President Jian had changed 7 personal assistants. Amelia Yu seemed to be staring thoughtfully out the window and not reacting to their conversation. In fact, she was listening intently. The girl told me that all those candidates ended badly. Some went missing. The last one was taken to a psychiatric clinic. The other 3 turned their backs contemptuously on the storyteller. They were no longer interested in her. They needed new information. The candidate with the straight hair said she expected to know the secret. The whole of Lin City has known about those 7 assistants for a long time. The girl with long hair scrutinized her nails. She asked not to be intimidated by such nonsense. The candidate with curled hair sighed dreamily and embarrassedly declared that she would do anything for the position of personal assistant to the president. Amelia Yu finally broke away from the window and looked at the girls. She asked what else was known about the president. The girls were immediately downcast. They realized that they had no chance against Amelia. The girl was taller and bigger than her competitors. Amelia Yu walked over to the girls and began to remove the dark glasses that hid her unremarkable appearance. Holding her glasses in her hand, the girl looked at the candidates. The fiery color of her hair made her brown eyes seem fiery too. All four girls instantly fell in love with her. Of course, they were ready to tell the object of their adoration everything. After all, they all looked almost identical, just like schoolgirls in class. Amelia with her figure shone like the sun among them. The girl with neatly trimmed hair stated that John Feng was able to establish his company in just 3 years. The candidate who was trying to scare everyone else showed a picture and dreamily reported that he had a great body. The third girl sighed heavily and showed the picture in her purse. This guy was too cute and unattainable for her. Rereading John Feng's quote book, the fourth challenger stated that he was very gentle and courteous with girls. Amelia Yu smiled when she heard about unattainability. This matter was becoming more and more interesting to her. The young man stepped into the elevator and confidently dialed the 68th floor. A ring glistened on the young man's middle finger. The guy with golden-colored hair considered himself a big fashionista and tried to match his image. He had a shining earring in his left ear. A young man stepped out of the elevator. He wore worn jeans and a khaki-colored raglan. Underneath the jeans, he could see a pair of unattractive sneakers. Appearing at the office door and noticing John Feng sitting at the desk, the young man shook his head disapprovingly. He walked closer and noticed that President Jian was working too hard. Feng really looked busy. He barely raised his eyes to his interlocutor and frowned. John Feng made it clear that it would be better for his guest to keep quiet for a while. But the young man had no intention of leaving. The president sighed heavily and broke away from his papers, throwing a pen at the guest. The pen on the button flew swiftly at the young man with golden hair. Anyone else in his place wouldn't have even noticed it. Laughing, the young man deftly caught the thrown pen with 3 fingers and reported that the designated target had not yet shown up. Zhang Feng narrowed his eyes and frowned at the guest. He assumed that the young man had come to the office just to have fun. In the meantime, the entrant took the initiative and pulled the back of the nearest chair toward him with determination. The young man smirked and hoped that the girls who passed the selection would be suitable for the president of the company. John Feng faintly smiled and inquired if there was any interesting girl among those who had been selected. The young man with golden hair yawned lazily and said that it was business as usual. They were only interested in President Jian and his money. Suddenly his face changed. The young man exclaimed excitedly that he had remembered something. He no longer seemed half asleep. With his mouth full, the young man stood up from his chair and excitedly began to narrate. Jian Feng irritably asked him to chew his food first. He walked over to the young man and deftly snatched the package from him. Jian Feng said that it was time to prepare for the interview. The young man reached for his bag and pitifully said that it was his food. Jian Feng raised his hand with the food above his head. The young man roared and repeated only one phrase, begging for his nuts back. The loss of his food impressed the young man too much. The young man timidly pulled President Jian Feng by his sleeve. He knew that begging Feng was useless, he could only ask. Suddenly the young man felt that something wrong was happening to him. His face twisted painfully. On the arm under his shoulder, the young man noticed a red growing spot and called out to President Jian Feng apprehensively. The boy began to scratch the reddened spot fiercely, but it wasn't getting any better, so he asked the president for help. The young man exclaimed that his whole body was itchy and someone had poisoned him on purpose. Jian Feng looked into the bag and found peanuts. He walked to the vault and pressed the call button. Jian Feng said the young man is just an idiot. He just has peanuts in his packet. When the doors of the room opened, Jian Feng recalled that his interlocutor had been allergic to peanuts since childhood. The young man turned to the golden-haired guy and asked reproachfully how he could not smell the peanuts. The young man fearfully asked President Jian Feng where he was going to go. After all, he needed help himself. Taking off his jacket and tie as he walked, Jian Feng entered the clothing storage room. Without turning around, he replied that the answer was obvious. Since the young man can't handle his responsibilities, you should handle the situation in his place. While President Jian was picking out his clothes, the young man was comfortably sprawled out on the guest sofa and dozing. Jian Feng walked out of the clothing storage room. On his feet were modern blue-gray sneakers. The young man looked at President Jian Feng perplexedly. He looked completely different, no one would recognize him. In a white t-shirt and with a gold-colored wig, the president looked very much like a young man lying on a sofa. Giles Gu squealed enthusiastically that he looked like his older brother and suggested that it was reincarnation magic. Jian Feng took the mask off his face and said that Giles Gu just doesn't understand anything. It's called disguise. The young man sighed tiredly and carefully placed the mask on his nose. No one should recognize him as the president of the company. John Feng asked the young man to rest for a while. He would later ask Nikki to bring some medicine for Giles. The 5 finalists had already gathered in the conference room. One of the girls told me that Giles Gu would be conducting the interview. The straight-haired challenger giggled shamefully. She was well aware of the persistent young man with a mischievous temper. The second girl remarked admiringly that she had seen pictures of this young man, and he is also very handsome, just like his boss. Amelia Yu thought about it for a moment. She had heard of Giles Gu, but she hadn't thought she would have to talk to him first. At this time, the door to the conference room began to open slightly, and a thin, bright ray of light entered the hallway. A tall young man with golden hair appeared on the doorstep. He greeted the applicants cheerfully. The 4 girls immediately stood up from the table. Their eyes reflected genuine delight. They had not expected to see a handsome young man. Their hearts were pounding frantically. Each of the 4 risked dropping dead with a heart attack. Giles Gu turned out to be much more handsome in person than in the picture, and the girls admired him. The finale was worth it to see the young man. Amelia Yu was the only one looking at the young man dispassionately. Giles Gu didn't interest her at all. The girl had her own agenda. The president of the company, John Feng, was studying Amelia surreptitiously. His eyes peered out from under his thick golden wig. He liked this girl very much. The young man exclaimed that today he was lucky. All the contestants were beautiful. John Feng took off his mask. The mask revealed the young and rather embarrassed face of a handsome young man. He stated that his name was Giles Gu, and today he will be the one interviewing for the position of assistant to the president of the company. Amelia Yu studied the young man carefully. She watched his every movement. Something was not right here. Meanwhile, all 4 young female applicants for the position of presidential aide squealed with delight. The more Amelia Yu looked at Giles Gu, the more he made her distrustful. He didn't look like that guy. Suddenly, the supposed Giles Gu himself turned to the girl and gave her a look of genuine surprise. The young man held out his hands to Amelia. He smiled dazzlingly and spread his hands apart. Giles Gu asked if he could show Amelia Yu a trick. All 4 contestants immediately frowned, starting to feel jealous of the girl. One of them even threatened with a clenched fist. Amelia Yu hesitated for a moment. After all, 1 or 2 small tricks obviously couldn't lead to anything bad. The girl smiled embarrassedly at Giles Gu and informed him that she would be very happy to see some interesting trick. Giles Gu snapped his fingers. Amelia Yu was astonished. A red rose flower appeared right in his hands. The young man gently held out a gorgeous flower to her and declared that it was 1,000,000 times inferior to the beauty of the girl herself. Amelia Yu smiled dazzlingly and politely thanked Mr. Gu. The flower is indeed very dignified. The girl looked at the blossoming bud with interest. The rose flower was very similar to a real one. Giles Gu's eyes peered slyly from under his dark cap. He was pleased that he'd managed to surprise the girl. Amelia Yu smiled defiantly at the young man and said that even the most beautiful roses in the world were not without thorns. She looked at the young man studyingly. Amelia had to admit that her game had started earlier than planned. John Feng tilted his head slightly and dejectedly thought that this time the opponent was quite interesting. All the girls were a little quiet. They were waiting with interest for the real interview to begin. John Feng only now remembered that he had forgotten to prepare the interview questions for the girls in the hustle and bustle, and needed to find a way out immediately. Fortunately, the young man's cell phone rang loudly in his pocket. It was his salvation. Now something could be thought of. John Feng took out his phone and apologized to the girls. He really needed to take an important call. Leaving the conference room, the young man closed the door tightly behind him, making sure none of the girls could hear him. John Feng answered the call and puzzledly asked the caller who he had the honor of talking to. Giles Gu's sister squealed into the phone that she had put peanuts in her brother's peanuts and suggested that the president have lunch together at the office. John Feng was angry. She was the reason why things didn't go according to plan today. He angrily pressed the call end button. The president of the company was tensely thinking. He needed to finish the interview as quickly as possible. In addition, Giles's sister Gu is very annoying. When she meets him, she constantly throws herself on his neck. The girl just adores him. John Feng thought about what it meant to be constantly subordinated to a very naughty child. The president peered furtively through the window of the conference room. The girls were chatting cheerfully among themselves, but Amelia Yu did not take part in their conversation. She sat elegantly at the table and waited for the interview to be conducted. Jian Feng looked at the girl with a smile. He would really like to disturb her peace and piss Amelia off. Upon entering the conference room, the young man smiled dazzlingly and announced to the girls that they were all excellent candidates. And it was for such lovely girls that he prepared a special task. All 4 girls were very interested in it. Sneaking a glance at Amelia, John Feng narrated that an assistant should be able to protect the president's personal space. Amelia Yu looked at the young man with interest, calmly noting all of his glances in her direction. That was the way it should be. She was the best here. Jianfeng said the president's personal assistant should know how to deal with offenders. The girl with the straight hair squealed that she understood everything. Surely many girls would want to get close to the president. The second girl angrily shouted to keep all the other women away from President Jianfeng. The third girl said in love that no girl in the world could resist the president's perfection. The last girl in their company couldn't wait until they were finally introduced to the president. This meeting was the dream of her life. Amelia Yu faintly smiled and asked the young man what exactly his special assignment was. Jianfeng smiled back at the girl. He appreciated her impulse to act, but asked for a little patience. The girls obediently froze and waited for further instructions. They were ready to pass any test for the sake of such a place. Amelia Yu tempered her fervor a bit and waited curiously for the young man's answer. She wondered what he had in mind. Jianfeng reported that there is a girl in the president's office right now. Each of them has 5 minutes to get her out of there. The young man drummed his fingers impatiently on the table. He said that this task had been invented especially for the finalists. Jianfeng frowned. He informed the contestants that there was something else. That girl in the study room is his sister. The young man dazzlingly smiled at the girls and sincerely wished them good luck. Jianfeng knew that it wouldn't be easy. Nikki jumped on the president's desk and sat down like she was at home. She looked in the shell-shaped mirror. She liked the result herself. Today she used a new shade of lipstick for the object of her adoration. Nikki immediately imagined Jianfeng aghast at her beauty and started lavishing compliments on her. Suddenly the far door of the study opened and heeled footsteps sounded distinctly on the marble tiles. Nikki immediately jumped off the table. She was absolutely convinced that it was President Jianfeng who had returned. Without even looking to see who had entered the president's office, Nikki ran happily towards her and threw herself into a hug. The girl who decided to be the first to try the task was very surprised to receive such a warm welcome. At that moment, Nikki herself realized her mistake. She pressed her body against the other girl's soft breasts. As she unclasped her arms, Nikki immediately jumped back and stared angrily at her guest. No one but her could enter the office. She started yelling and screaming that you can't enter someone else's office. The girl realized that she had failed the test. Nikki got even more upset and exclaimed that the girl was just a nasty bastard. Tears welled up in the challenger's eyes. Nikki shouted that no one dared enter President Jian's office without permission. The girl shook with fear. She tried to smile and settle the conflict by asking Nikki to calm down and just listen to her. Nikki was so angry that she chased the girl away without explanation, having previously scratched her face with her fingernails. The girl's eyes narrowed to tiny slits. This intruder had pissed her off with her behavior. At that moment, the office door opened. With a smile, the next girl looked inside and politely asked if she could come in. Nikki lost control of herself. With a malicious smirk, she declared that the girl had learned nothing. Even after an hour, Nikki was still pretty pissed off. One of the girls had a monitor right through her head. A burning lighter flew after her, and a few seconds later a powerful explosion was heard. The last of the four found herself wedged between pencils hammered into the wall. She didn't even have time to say a word. The first girl was now struggling to hide her wounds. This makeup had cost her a lot of money. The second girl had an ice compress on her head. She stated that the girl did not know what she was doing. The third girl sighed. The test seemed simple enough, but that obnoxious girl was simply impossible to deal with. Pulling a bloody pencil from her forehead, the last girl said doomfully that she was dying. They had all failed the mission. Amelia Yu knew what she was getting into. She resolutely opened the door of the conference room, about to show how to proceed. Jianfeng adjusted the visor of his baseball cap and hinted to Amelia that the other girls didn't work out. He smiled and asked if, after all this, Amelia wanted to try and banish his sister from the office herself. Amelia Yu didn't even turn around. She was determined, and no powers of the world could stop her now. The girl looked firmly in front of her. She said that she did not doubt her victory at all. She could pass the test. Amelia Yu turned around and winked slyly at Jianfeng. She indicated that she wanted to say one last thing. In her opinion, it was too easy an assignment, and could not even remotely be considered a weighty test. Nikki sat on the guest sofa in the office of Jianfeng, the president of the company. All these girls made her angry. Her face was flaming with anger. The girl shouted that she didn't understand why those strange women were coming to the office. As the door to the office began to slowly open, Nikki still continued to yell that she was going to complain to her brother. The soft but commanding voice of the stranger addressing Miss Gu seemed to sober the girl. She opened her eyes and raised her head. There was another stranger standing right in front of her. She was larger than the other girls. Nikki didn't even know when she'd had time to come in. Her hair was a fiery color. The girl with a perfect figure politely apologized to Nikki and asked her to leave the office. Miss Gu instantly boiled over. Besides, there was another reason. Her legs were as thin as matchsticks, and it annoyed her terribly. Nikki squealed that she hated strange women like her guest. In fact, she was just jealous of her well-built figure. Amelia Yu frowned. She only had 5 minutes to complete the task, and the girl was uncooperative. Nikki looked at her guest with anger. Whoever that girl was, she needed to be pointed to the place she deserved. Nikki Gu rushed forward and swung her hand furiously, contemplating ending the stranger once and for all. To her surprise, her guest caught her hand by the wrist without much difficulty and squeezed it tightly. Nikki's hand shook. The stranger gave Nikki a friendly smile like a good old friend, continuing to hold her hand with a dead grip. Amelia Yu stared intently into the girl's eyes, trying to reason with her. She didn't want to hurt Nikki. Amelia politely asked Nikki if she wanted to think about her proposal again in more detail. Amelia was a head taller than the girl. Nikki cried with helplessness. She screamed that no one had the right to kick her out of this office. Amelia Yu towered over her. Nikki realized that the girl was too strong. She wouldn't be able to resist her for long. She could hardly hide her tears anymore, caused by the hurt of defeat. Nikki felt like prey caught by a predator. She pictured a large forest on a dark night. A huge eagle could be seen among the glow of lightning. It grabs its prey. The predator repeats it day after day. He dives down with a practiced movement and picks up the rabbit near the ground. And now this very eagle, with a glint of a predatory eye, impatiently tells Nikki that her time is running out. Amelia Yu squeezed the girl's wrist a little harder and politely repeated her request to leave the room. Nikki couldn't stand it and squealed that she didn't even know who she was dealing with. The girl asked why she had to leave. Amelia Yu took pity on her victim and let go of her hand. The girl said she didn't have much time left. Taking advantage of her arm being released, Nikki immediately turned the other way, asserting her right to her seat. Flushed with anger, Nikki told the intruder that she had no intention of leaving the president's office at all. Raising her tone more and more, Nikki yelled that there was nothing the girl could do to her. She doesn't even know who she's messing with. Amelia Yu replied that she knew the girl's identity. That was the reason why she was here. It wasn't possible to reach an amicable agreement. Amelia Yu sighed heavily and apologized to Nikki in advance for the inconvenience. She took a quick step forward. When she was behind Nikki, she struck her neck with the edge of her palm. She didn't make a sound. Amelia Yu caught the girl with one hand, who immediately after being hit, lost consciousness and started falling down. Wrapping both arms around Nikki, Amelia Yu began to walk out of the office. Nikki was speechless and only moaned on the way out. John Feng was satisfied. He enthusiastically reported that Amelia had managed to complete the task in just 3 minutes. He extended his hand to the girl and congratulated her on her enrollment in the company. He was pleased to see Amelia Yu as an employee. The girl smiled and shook John Feng's hand. She reported that another result was out of the question. John Feng led the girl into the room and informed her that her resume was flawless. He slammed the girl's file shut. John Feng smiled slyly and said that he would like to ask Amelia one more question. He watched the girl's reaction. Amelia Yu laughed and said that the company had already settled on her candidacy anyway, so it was fine. The young man bent over the table and asked, lifting her chin with his finger, who she found more handsome. It's about him and President Jian Feng. Giles Gu was smiling so dazzlingly that the question simply took the girl by surprise. She didn't even know what to say to him. Amelia Yu couldn't contain her smile and laughed infectiously. The girl said that he was President Jian Feng. Smiling slyly, Amelia Yu informed that it was for this reason that she simply couldn't compare them. Jian Feng was pleasantly surprised. He asked the girl how she had managed to come to this conclusion. Amelia got a cheerful light in her eyes. She explained that it was very simple. Giles Gu was known for his love of earrings. Indeed, Jian Feng remembered Giles Gu's shiny earrings that he never went out without. And his own appearance, Jian Feng seemed to have thought of everything in detail, even wearing a golden wig. Pointing at her ear with a ruby earring, Amelia Yu exclaimed that Jian Feng's earlobes weren't even pierced. Besides, thanks to Nikki's girlfriend, Gu was unconscious, and a real brother would definitely check on his little sister's condition. Amelia Yu exclaimed that he couldn't possibly be Giles Gu. There's only one person who dares to impersonate someone from their company. Moreover, no one dares to reveal this person's identity. Jian Feng smiled. He liked the girl's train of thought. Smiling shyly, Amelia Yu said that this person could not be anyone other than President Jian Feng. The president of the company himself began to applaud the girl vigorously. It was all right. She had hit the mark on all counts. Jian Feng smiled and stated that Amelia Yu was a very intelligent girl. She was exactly the kind of employee he needed right now. The young man stood up from the table and looked intently at Amelia. He said that he was interested in one more question. Jian Feng assumed that the girl had practiced martial arts somewhere. She had a good enough punch. Amelia was not taken by surprise by this question. The girl looked at her interlocutor nonchalantly and confirmed his guess. With a dazzling smile, Amelia Yu informed the company president that she practiced karate for self-defense. Jian Feng faintly smiled with the edge of his lips in response. He couldn't suppress the incredulous chuckle within him. Jian Feng turned around in the other direction. Waving his hand from the back, he asked to come to work tomorrow. Amelia Yu smiled. She said that she would gladly follow all of President Jian Feng's instructions diligently. In fact, it was time to see how good she was at hunting wolves. That's what they called playboys among themselves. Walking out of the company building, Amelia Yu stretched in relief. Jian Feng was not an easy person to deal with. Amelia decided that she would rest first. Laughing, she told herself that she could accomplish any task. She felt very good now. She made herself comfortable in the leather armchair, dreaming of coming home and getting a good night's sleep. Suddenly, the golden-colored smartphone vibrated. The telecom operator delivered a new multimedia message to Amelia Yu. The girl looked with surprise at the screen of an expensive phone with a Pear logo. She could afford to buy this model. The girl's eyes widened with genuine horror more and more with each passing second. Of course, she'd already heard about it today. But now she had been sent pictures of Jian Feng's former assistants. None of these photos could be looked at calmly. This shocked even the always cool-headed Amelia Yu. She couldn't stand it and turned purple with anger, clutching the phone in her hands. Her good mood vanished in an instant. Drop by drop, the information about the president turned into a black abyss. Closing her phone, the girl stared simply in front of her for a while, but she still couldn't calm down. Amelia Yu closed her eyes and tried to relax. Everything would be fine, and she would avenge the president for all the victims. Suddenly, she remembered herself as a child on the lawn. On her mother's birthday, she had picked a big bouquet of flowers as a present. Running home and swinging open the door, Amelia cheerfully shouted to her mom that she was already back from her walk. But no one answered her, and the surprised girl began to suspect that something very wrong had happened. Lowering her head down, Amelia Yu noticed the bloodstains on the floor. She still didn't want to believe that this could have happened. Then she roared, unashamed of her tears. The carefully picked wildflowers fell out of her weakened hands. One girl was walking swiftly down a hallway full of roses and drops of blood. With her little legs, she scrambled over so fast she almost fell over. The girl was in tears. She realized what those scattered roses and drops of blood could mean. In tears, she finally came to the door. Opening it, she saw a woman who lay covered in blood. She was covering her face, but the rest of her body was mangled. The girl stopped in front of her mother, wiping her tears. At the same time, the mother tried to get up, despite her condition. As she lifted herself up, the woman smiled brightly. She told the girl to come over to her, for she would make something. She opened her arms wide to hug her. At the same time, a trickle of blood was visible from the woman's mouth, while the rest of her face was battered. The girl only sniffled, trying to hold back her tears. At the same time, the little girl clenched her fists with all her might that almost blood spurted from her small hands. Squirming, the girl said she was going to get revenge on the bastard who did this to her mother. The woman leaned over to her daughter and said she was fine. She also said that little Ho should wait until she was older. The girl could no longer hold back her tears, and only looked at her mom. Her mom patted the girl on the head and told her that only then could she protect her mom. The woman pressed her child to her bosom and told her not to cry, for her little one would sing her a song. Lying on her mother's breast, the girl bit her lip and, still crying, hesitated. At the same time, our protagonist, also remembering this, cried. Taking out of her purse pictures of her mother and child, she only said she was all grown up. The girl clutched her picture to her chest and only smiled softly. Immediately afterward, however, she opened her eyes full of seriousness. Looking at the street around her, she realized that she was no longer afraid. Immediately after that, the girl pressed the gas pedal. Even though her high heel didn't allow her to do it comfortably, she was determined. Immediately afterward, the girl put on black glasses. Amelia's car started off quickly, and the girl only thought that all the scoundrels should go to hell. Meanwhile, there was an extremely pleasant environment around one cozy cottage. The weather was beautiful. A news reporter said that recently a man had strangely disappeared from a hotel. The reporter also said this is the 5th case of disappearance of a person in N City. Jian Feng was sitting on the sofa wearing only a robe, watching TV. At the same time as the reporter said that all the victims were male, Jian Feng took the remote control and pressed the off button. Literally instantly, the TV screen went out and there was silence. The man walked over to his wine storage unit and picked up one of the bottles. Opening it and pouring it into glasses, the man hesitated. Settled into a comfortable position, he thought. This organization is getting bolder and bolder. At the same time, Jiat Tian's building had a beautiful ambiance. The hall was glowing with luxury and officiousness. At the same time, one girl in high heels also arrived at the company. She was irresistible and carried only a small purse. The other staff members also noticed such an unusual person. They wondered if she was the new assistant. Some thought she was very charming and only complimented her. However, others thought that this woman looked a lot like a fox. At the same time, Amelia looked at her co-workers with a barbed look. Noticing the girl looking in their direction, and the whole crowd shifted to whispers. The main character looked extremely good. She clearly stood out among all the other employees. and the girl knew her worth. However, hearing all the negative words about her, Amelia only thought about how women could not be more friendly to each other. Surname walked to the elevator. It was comparatively empty, but she was not alone. The girl didn't notice her coworker at first and was very surprised by her. On the girl, she thought she was extremely beautiful. It wasn't long before the elevator arrived at the first floor. Right after the girls entered the cabin, the door was about to close. However, at the last moment, someone held the elevator door trying to get there in time. As it turned out, it was Giles Gu who held up the doors. He looked at the girls with his blue eyes. Immediately afterward, he called them beautiful ladies and asked that they go together. The protagonist's co-worker literally jumped with surprise. With a flushed face, she started waving her hand and saying that it was dangerous to stop the elevator like that. Amelia only observed the situation. Immediately afterward, Giles Gu stroked her head and thanked her for reminding him. The girl literally burst into flames at this awkwardness. The guy just thought about how cute she was. Once inside the elevator car, he continued to talk to the female employee. He said she just smelled the aroma outside. It wasn't long before the man put his hand on the woman's waist. Amelia noticed such a mean act on the boy's part, and wasn't surprised in the least. In her mind, she recalled her own morals. She remembered that a man's care had its price. The guy started whispering to the employee that it was the scent of her hair. Suddenly, however, the boy felt a sharp pain on his foot. Amelia had stepped on his shoe. At that moment, the man cried out very loudly. The protagonist only ducked down to the guy and apologized to him. At the same time, the guy lowered himself to the floor, stroking the sore spot. He was extremely angry. He thought she'd done it on purpose and started insulting her badly. Unexpectedly, he still looked at the main character and immediately blushed. The girl, with a face expressing no feigned concern, bent over to the guy and asked if she had hurt him. Immediately after the protagonist looked at Amelia, he only sat mesmerized in a stupor. The concern on her face looked very delicate to the guy. The guy immediately said he was fine. I can only think that a fountain of blood could have flown from his nose from happiness. The protagonist said she could now be at peace, thinking only that his pain was a treat for her eyes. Amelia delighted Giles Gu to his core, and all he could think about was how cute she was. Insert on the leg, the guy said she was new here, otherwise he would have remembered her. The girl introduced herself and said that she was Yu Ho, the new assistant to the president. She also asked me to be lenient with her. The boy was surprised at the same time at the name of the new assistant. He thought that among all the choices, it was not surprising that his brother had hired her. It wasn't long before the group arrived at the 50th floor. The woman came out at once. With a light step, she tried to get away from Giles Gu as quickly as possible, not noticing her own blush on her face. At the same time, there were only 2 people left in the cabin. They went upstairs. Giles Gu said that since she was new, he had to tell her all the rules of life. Yu Ho was surprised at such generosity from her colleague and said she was all ears. Suddenly, the man put his hand on the back of her head and came hard closer. Once they arrived on the 68th floor, he said she should never fall in love with the president. The man moved closer to Amelia's ear and began to whisper something in an ominous voice. Right after the doors opened, the man said she would be doomed forever. Sitting in his office, John Feng was already waiting for them. He looked at the newcomers provocatively. At the same time, John Feng was sitting in the study sorting out documents. Meanwhile, Giles Gu threatened Yu Ho's way and said that their John Feng was very hardworking. Looking down at her, he told Yu Ho not to be lazy. What Yu Ho said is that she has her own attitude towards work. Looking straight into her eyes, she asked him to also call him Assistant Yu. The guy didn't expect such a request from the main character and fell into a severe stupor. He thought she had put him in the co-worker zone and didn't even know what to say. Yu Ho thanked her for understanding and knocked on the door. From the other side, she heard that she was allowed to come in. However, at the same time, the guy was literally crying in frustration as the greeting failed. Right after Yu Ho entered the office, she greeted the president. She also reminded him that her name was Yu Ho. Jian Feng raised his head at the girl's voice. Immediately after Jian Feng looked into her eyes, she said something to the effect that she was his new assistant. Right after that, Jian Feng closed the report book and said that she was very punctual. Pulling up her seat, he said it was really no big deal even if she was a little late. He also said that the girl needs a good night's sleep. Even Giles Gu was surprised by the statement, as he wondered why his brother was so good to her. The protagonist was also surprised by this turn of events because she expected Jian Feng to be much stricter. Immediately afterward, she remembered that he was the playboy and clearly cut off that punctuality was the most basic quality of an employee. At the same time, our Yu Ho was only thinking about the fact that feigned care is old school. Suddenly, someone's hand appeared from the president's back. As it seemed to be, Giles Gu grabbed the president by the shoulder and beckoned him over. Making a cute defeatist face, he asked if he could come later since he needed a good night's sleep too. However, Jian Feng was at her best and turned toward the source of the voice with a serious expression. Threw our brother off his back. He said the business of acquiring Yule's company was his responsibility. He then turned towards Giles Gu and said with fury in his eyes that he should have the result within 3 months. Holding out a document with important information to the almost crying guy, he shouted for him to start immediately. Immediately after that, he approached the protagonist and said that her office was here and he would show the way. Jielzgu almost cried and said that Jianfeng is a two-faced devil and why he has dates first and not friends. The man turned to the source of the voice and interjected what he had said. The guy abruptly changed his attitude and said that their Jianfeng was so wonderful and he was his idol, waving his pom-pom. At the same time, Jianfeng said to ignore this idiot and extended his hand to the girl. Younger brother thought with an expression of interest to see if brother had fallen in love with this girl. As Yu Ho and Jianfeng walked towards the office, the guy thought that he should follow them. Pretty soon they found themselves in the office of the assistant to the president. Yu Ho thanked the president for his help and said that she can handle it from here on out on her own. At the same second, Jianfeng grabbed the girl's hand and called out her name. He asked if she had time tonight. Yu Ho apologized, making it clear that she didn't have time today. Right after that, she said she already had an appointment. As soon as Jianfeng left, the girl went into her office and closed the door with a loud slam. Putting her hand to her lips, all she could think of was that this playboy's tricks were so-so. At the same time, the president was walking leisurely down the hall. Jielzgu, who was following them, and thought it was a double murder. Jianfeng stared at his brother with fury and asked what he meant. Pressing his hand to his t-shirt, the man said what? She had rejected him this morning. Averted her eyes, the guy said what she had now snapped at him. Playing dumb, Jielzgu said that's how she got a double murder. Jianfeng went to his office and turned around and told the guy not to touch her, all she is him. Jielzgu was completely confused and only stood in a stupor. While the guy stopped in the hallway, the president moved on. Adjusting his tie, the man said he had a new plan. It was quite soon upon the weekend for the main character. She was enjoying them and relaxing in her bedroom. Pulling herself up, the girl, who was still in her pajamas and hoop ears, said something to the effect that the work in the company was finished and the organization had no new assignments. She thought about how she'd have a better drink tonight. Pulling out a few packets of chips, she thought it was about time to eat them. I also didn't forget about the best submissive, the friend of all movie buffs. She didn't forget about the best cereals, because she just wanted to watch them. Sprawled out on the bed, all she could do was laugh and realize that this was her favorite pastime. Lying sprawled out on the couch, the girl watched her favorite TV series, and thought it was a great feeling not to see any stinking men. No work, just yummies and TV series. Suddenly, she heard a loud shout from her neighbors. Someone was criticizing a certain Shen Haolian and accusing him of how it was possible to do such a thing. The girl immediately turned in the direction of the voice. Rumblings were heard from the side of the door. Apparently, the girl was talking about how he could cheat on her and called him a cheater. The girl visibly grew serious in the face and thought about what could have happened. Putting her hoop with ears on the table, she thought she'd have to watch this. In the doorway, she saw that there was a woman holding onto her neighbor's door. She lay on the floor and begged Shen Haolian to open the door. Immediately afterward, Yu Ho approached the woman and asked her to pay attention to her. She was about to ask about what had happened. However, she didn't have time to finish the question. The woman raised her eyes to the main character. She was in tears. However, something unexpected happened. Yu Ho was afraid of it herself. A woman fell unconscious right in front of the protagonist. Taking her by the shoulders, Yu Ho only thought about what had happened. Amelia only looked threateningly at the door, thought another playboy. Pretty soon, Yu Ho was frying something in a pan. Suddenly the bell rang. Someone tried to disturb Amelia's luck on her day off. Picking up the phone, the surname realized that Jianfeng was calling and asked how she could help. Holding the phone between her shoulder and ear, she heard that Jianfeng would come by to see her in 10 minutes. At the same time, Jianfeng was in the car talking to the protagonist through an earpiece. He said that he had something for her. Yu Ho only looked at the unexpected guest and told the president that she was free right now. However, she also asked that Jianfeng come by a little later. It turns out that Yu Ho was frying eggs at the time. Jianfeng frowned his face and asked why he was the one who should do so. Yu Ho made scrambled eggs at the end and put slices of bacon and vegetables next to each other. To the president, she replied that she was making scrambled eggs. Jianfeng only thought that she was just in time. Making another turn, the man said he hadn't had breakfast yet. Softening his face, Jianfeng said just that. He would come to her and wait for her. He told the protagonist to take up her cause and hung up the phone. Yu Ho only heard a beep to indicate the end of the call. She looked up still in a stupor. She figured she only had 10 minutes, and in that time she had to get everything done and have time to do her makeup. While Yu Ho was trying to put on makeup, the very woman who was crying woke up. She apologized to the protagonist, distracting her from the proceedings. She asked if the main character had helped her. Yu Ho quickly recognized her and said that it was really her. Handing her a plate of scrambled eggs, she asked her how she was feeling since she had fainted. Yu Ho also thought that it seems to be because of glycemia and emotional excitement. She immediately told her to eat because she would feel better immediately afterwards. The woman began to assess Yu Ho. She was very surprised, for the girl looked very much like a fox. Because Yu Ho was still in her pajamas, all of her in shapes were visible. The woman thought that since she was a fox, she would laugh at her. When Yu-ho tried to offer scrambled eggs to the woman, she just threw down her plate and said it was none of her business. Yu-ho only thought about whether she had done something wrong. Yu-ho told the woman to calm down and asked who the man was. She also said what she could help her by putting her hand on her heart. The woman turned away from helping the protagonist, waved her off, and told her she didn't have to, and she should mind her own business. Yu-ho grabbed the woman's hand and asked her to stop. With a serious expression on her face, she asked if she wanted to fly, she shouldn't give playboy indulgences. Waving off the arm of the protagonist, the woman said that the woman herself looked like a divorcee. Furiously turning away, she said, "Let the divorcee lead the collapse." Immediately afterward, the woman stormed out of the apartment with rage and slammed the door. At the same time, Yu-ho only stood in a stupor because she didn't expect the woman to refuse her help. She sighed heavily and put her hand on her forehead from the throbbing headache. She realized she needed to find another way to find out who her husband was. At the same time, a knock sounded on the door. It was Jian Feng who came to the protagonist's apartment. While outside the door, he heard the main character being accused of looking like a divorcee. Immediately afterward, he stepped abruptly away from the door, and the very same woman came out of it all in tears. Jian Feng only looked at her back and didn't say anything. The woman headed for the exit at a brisk pace. The main character squinted or thought about how Yu-ho could have known her. At the same time, Yu-ho let the president into her home, and he sat comfortably at the table. Jian Feng seriously looked at the main character. Yu-ho smiled naively and thought about what he was doing here. Jian Feng asked with a serious look if that girl was her friend. Yu-ho averted her eyes and said something that she was her neighbor. Jian Feng, eating scrambled eggs, said what her neighbor is an internet star. Cave in the eyes. He said that to be more precise, her husband is very popular now. Yu-ho was surprised by this news. She got serious and asked if Jian Feng knew her husband. Christian hesitated and put his hand to his chin. Quite soon he said what he had only heard about him. He said that Shen Haoyuan was an online writer who lived by composing love stories. Blushing, Jian Feng said that this book is about their daily life, and which seems to be popular. Yu-ho abruptly remembered that she had heard that name this morning. With a wink at the president, she said that it was unexpected that Jian Feng was also interested in such things. Jian Feng only said that it was actually the fault of his younger brother's sister. He remembered how the girl often pestered the man and told him to read the story. When the protagonist of such looked about who it was, he saw a weblog of a married couple who were consecrating details in their life together. Squinting his eyes, the man only wondered if modern children like to read such things. At the same time, the girl only thought that such a thing could happen with the president and her together. At the same time, Jian Feng only slammed the phone on the girl's face and said that he would ask his brother to take her to school. While Jian Feng was pondering his memories, the main character and interrupted his thoughts. She asked what happened to the president after all. Jian Feng put a box on the table. He said, "This is a lunking harvested by the Qingming house. And you already said that it was sent to the president by one of his good staff and added that the tea was of good quality." But Yu-ho was confused and asked if that was all Jian Feng had come to her house for. The president said that earlier in her resume, she mentioned that she was proficient in tea ceremony and asked her to make tea. It wasn't long before Yu-ho was finishing up with serving tea. Jian Feng brought the teacup closer to his lips, taking a sip. A peaceful atmosphere reigned. However, in the mind of the protagonist, she only very much did not get discouraged whether he really came here or tea. With a peaceful expression on her face, she was only thinking about how she could kick the president out as soon as possible so he wouldn't waste his time on her. They sang tea and all morning. There was an extremely nervous atmosphere. However, that was not the end of the afternoon. They were still drinking tea the same way. It was probably a surprise by now, but their tea party stretched well into the evening. It wasn't long before dusk fell on the city. There was a slight breeze outside. Yu-ho was extremely embarrassed. The entire day she had actually been drinking tea all day. She decided to turn her plan into life, thinking that soon that one would be in her hands. She looked slyly at the president and beckoned him over. She also said that she had been drinking tea all day. The man said with an extreme peaceful expression on his face that it was too late. He approached the protagonist closely. The woman only thought, how could you, such a man, become a leader? Because he is just like all these golden youths who think with their heads instead of their heads. The woman just watched the man. She thought you were too boring because he got caught too fast. If he stayed with her and spent the night, she would make him drink the dope that would lead him to the truth. However, Jian Feng suddenly said in all seriousness that he was leaving the rest of the tea to her so as not to waste her tea ceremony skills. She even said that he would leave her at this point. Yu-ho couldn't say anything as she stood there in a stupor. She wondered if Jian Feng was a fool. Still holding out the tea box, Jian Feng asked if she really didn't want it since she didn't take it. Yu-ho took the box and just plunged into her thoughts. She wondered if she was not attractive enough, or if Jian Feng was too arrogant to condescend to a simple person like her. After thanking her for the box of tea, she said goodbye to the president. Slamming the door angrily, she only thought in her mind that she hoped she wouldn't meet him here again. Right after Jianfeng left, the girl went to her laptop and realized that she needed to get back to work. With a serious expression on her face, she typed in information about the man. She typed Shen Haiyuan's name into the search bar of a popular social media site. She immediately stumbled upon the post that Jianfeng had previously viewed. Sagging further, she saw a post about how that woman was pregnant by him. Scrolling even further, he saw a post about courting a girl. Yu-Ho realized that he treated his wife as his dearest treasure. However, Yu-Ho realized that because then the happy woman wouldn't notice the cheating. Immediately afterward, the woman pulled a small box out of her coma. Unfolding it, she pulled out a surveillance camera from there and thought she would exploit his fear to the fullest. Squinting, Amelia thought for sure she would make him pay for this. One morning, a girl was walking her dog in the park. Suddenly, Sleep heard a voice that stopped her. The girl turned her head in the direction of the source of the sound. There did Yu-Ho, who said she dropped the bracelet. The girl was extremely thoughtful about because she looked familiar and most likely lived in the neighborhood. Frowning into her eyes, the girl wondered why she was here, and if she was somehow related to the old woman from yesterday. Yu-Ho opened the girl's hands and put the bracelet there. She said with a happy face that she found it behind her. She also asked if it was hers. The girl looked at the red gold bracelet of her hand. She blushed and said that she had dropped it. At the same time, the girl was extremely happy to find a bracelet from the latest collection of Bulgaga, and although it is not hers, only a fool would not take advantage of such an opportunity. Yu-Ho extended her hand and said hello. She introduced herself not by her own name, but under the name Shan. The girl began to notice some weirdness in the main character. She noticed her Prada suit. Her expensive purse is this Alvi bag. She also spotted Shanel jewelry, particularly her earrings. In her thoughts, she came to the decision that she was either an heiress or the mistress of some powerful man. Deciding that they would definitely get along, she said that her name was Lin. She also asked what the main character was doing. With embarrassment, Yu-Ho said something that she is personally an assistant to the president. He winked at the girl and asked her again what she was doing there, because she knew everything. Grabbed the main character's hand. She said the handsome guy she saw last time was very nice and she was lucky to have a boss. Yu-Ho began to complain that her luck was slipping away because lately Jianfeng had been very unhappy with her. Looking at his newfound friend Shan said what? He said he was tired of her. The girl winked at the protagonist and said she was in a relationship recently. She also told us that since she got her bracelet back, she would help her and told us to stop by for a chat. Pretty soon the protagonist found herself in that girl's apartment. With naive eyes, Shan said her house is gorgeous. She also asked to look around. The girl said she could look around, and while she did, she would go get them something to drink. It wasn't long before Yu-Ho found herself in the girl's bedroom. Abruptly, she got serious and started looking for a comfortable place for Bug to sit. It wasn't long before she pulled a surveillance camera out of her bag. She discreetly pinned it in the picture frame. She was pleased with herself and thought the whole business was done. After a while, Yu-Ho looked into her laptop and now the surveillance footage. She turned on the video with a serious face and couldn't stand what was in store for her anymore. There was some guy, most likely Shen Haoyuan, lying over the girl and saying that it had been so long since they had seen each other. He started to say that he missed him madly and said to touch him. But the girl stopped him and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Cried and started to say that her wife came to her crying under the door. As tears welled up in her eyes, she said something that scared her very much. Shen Haoyuan looked at the girl and called out her name. Approaching the girl, he said to just think of her as a rabid dog. The man started whispering in her ear that he would have left her if she wasn't his money tree. The girl put her hand on the man's chest and said sarcastically how cruel he was. A woman who approached the man asked how it was that the old woman made money in the first place. The man said bingo and grabbed the girl's breasts. The girl only shouted happily. The man began to remember his popular love affair. As it turned out, absolutely all parts of it were written by her. The girl tried extremely hard to be content, but he didn't appreciate it at all. He also called the woman an idiot. The man remembered coming up to her while she was working and telling her his opinion of the book. Despite the fact that the man was telling a complete lie, however, the woman was happy with these words and took them for the truth. The man closed his eyes and said that at first she just wrote a few episodes and became popular. Then he realized this was his chance. Looking into the girl's eyes, he said what? He had gotten her to publish books in his name. The girl touched Shen Haoyuan's lips and sarcastically said that she didn't expect him to be so cruel to use his wife as a money tree, and also asked how about her. Shen Haoyuan said that this old woman couldn't even compare to 1/10,000th of a girl, and he would prove it today. Immediately afterward, they secluded themselves. Realizing that no more useful information would be obtained by the protagonist, she closed her laptop. She was extremely furious and was offended by the way Shen Haoyuan called his wife. All she said was that evil people are equally bad all over the world. However, after such a burst of rage, the girl tried to calm down. She looked up, still holding the laptop in her hands, and wondered. It wasn't long before she closed her eyes and sank into her memories. It was memories of a long winter's night. Little Amelia begged me not to hit her mom. The girl was crying in the corner of the room, watching her father beat his wife. He beat her so badly that there were already bloody marks. It's worth adding that he beat her with a leather belt, which made the injuries worse. The man was trying to find out where Mama hid the money. His wife said that he doesn't have any money. She can't find any work. The man looked at the woman and said that since she couldn't work, she should go into prostitution. Immediately after the woman stopped and marketed to Shen Haoyuan, she grabbed onto her daughter, protecting her. Pretty soon the man looked at the woman Riley and said that old woman and no one would want her. The whole family was by now sobbing bitterly because they couldn't stand the man's temper. She as a man said a meaningful but and went down on one knee. He took the little protagonist's hands in his and examined her. After analysis, he said she was a different story. Suddenly Amelia heard her doorbell ring. Someone even knocked without hearing a response from the landlady. Yuho squinted her eyes and thought who could have come this late now. However, despite her doubts, she opened the door and looked at the comer. A girl with pink hair and a naive expression was standing there. She waved her hand and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Yuho immediately recognized that this girl's name was Vivian Liu. The protagonist was extremely surprised by her guest and asked what she was doing here. The girl grinned and said she had been sent a new assignment. Immediately afterward, she said they hadn't seen each other in a while and asked if the protagonist wanted to invite her in. The main character standing there in a stupor like she's waking up and saying she should really come in. The girl tried to hug the protagonist, but it did not work. Amelia dodged the hands of the entrant. She almost cried and said that the girl was very cold. She watched the apartment of the main character and said that her house is very big and cozy, that she does not want to book a hotel. Winking at the main character, she asked if she would mind if she stayed here for a few days. Yuho was angry and said she would. With a coldness in her voice, she told her to get out, and in 500 meters on the right would be the Miranda Hotel, and said they were already waiting for her. At her friend's lunch, the girl hung in her arms and told her not to be so cold. She said what they could both be called beautiful, life-beaten she-wolves. The girl was immersed in her memories and looked like she was dreaming. She had already started to say that good sisters are bound to be nice to each other and share blankets, but Yuho stopped her and said no. Right after that, Yuho looked at her watch. It was after 12. She said that unless she had something serious going on, they should finish talking about the past for today. The girl looked at the protagonist with a tearful face. Suddenly, she blurted out that her new watch was very cool. The protagonist's patience was running out. Immediately afterward, the girl smiled and said so-and-so. Approaching the main character's ear, she said that this time her target was Shen Haoyuan. Yuho was very surprised that it was a Category D trader the organization had sent just her. In her thoughts, she was very surprised, because if she didn't know something was investigating Shen Haoyuan, she would have finished by tomorrow morning. The girl said something that Amelia underestimates Shen Haoyuan. With a serious expression on her face, she said he is a human skin. She said she uses her identity as a writer to help Shen Haoyuan seduce naive girls. Sometimes he would seduce them to the point where it was impossible not to go to the police. Toth said that under the pretense that it gave him inspiration, he had sex with groupies. Amelia almost turned at such a statement. She began listing the scoundrel's sins. He already had adultery, plagiarism, and now seducing girls. At this moment, the girl smiled at Yuho. She gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Smiling like that, said that the last name hadn't changed at all, and that even after so many assignments, she still couldn't contain her emotions. The main heroine said with fury that it doesn't give them the right to do that. Pulling away from her friend, Vivian began to speak her plan already. She said it's working together to eliminate all moral freaks. Yuho said that yes, he is his target right now, but she should realize that Yuho is working alone. Vivian was upset at her friend's words. After all, it's been so long, she still sees right through everyone. Amelia said that of course she could make an exception this time. She put her hand on her chest and said that she would be leading the mission this time. The girl got flustered, but still agreed to the proposal and called the main character boss. Immediately after that, Amelia averted her eyes and realized that her main task was still Jian Feng and Shen Haoyuan. This was just a shabos, however. She still needed to get along to cooperate as soon as possible. Walking back to the door, Yuho said that until this was all over, she would live with her, but she would have to obey. Vivian obediently agreed to the protagonist's demand. The girl exhaled and realized that it was a good thing that Yuho had agreed after all, or wondered who made Amelia so bossy. It wasn't long before a pillow flew into her face. Its main character ditched her and said they'll go to bed early tonight because they start tomorrow. The girl began to glow with happiness. She said that Amelia was really a professional, because she was able to come up with a plan so quickly. At the same time, a meeting was being held for you. The meeting place was in some popular shopping center. Was the queue for Shen Haoyuan very big? After all, he was very popular. We've been watching the situation. The company has been watching the crowd. Amelia said the higher he stands, the more he will fall. Turning away from the crowd, Yuho said that the fan meeting was already over and they were leaving as planned. The girl winked and realized that it was now time for her to come out. At the same time, there was something unusual about the men's restroom. Shen Haoyuan walked into it, trying to most likely fix the need. Suddenly, a girl crashes into him and shrieks loudly. The man turned to the girl and asked if she was blind. However, here he looked closely at the girl and was very surprised. On the floor lay Vivian in a short dress. She asked to be excused. There was also a book with Roman lying nearby. Looking at the book, Shen Haoyuan realized that this girl was his fan. He examined the girl again and realized she was pretty cute. The man held out his hand to the girl and apologized. The girl was very surprised by such a gesture of the guy. With a calm face, Shen Haoyuan said something that he would help her up. Suddenly, the girl asked who he was. The man was extremely tense because he didn't think the groupie wouldn't recognize his face. He started to say his name when he was stopped. The unexpected girl shrieked his name as if she was very surprised. Carr freaked out and told her to be quiet. He also put his finger on her lips. With a smile on his face, he told her to be a little quieter because there were too many of his female fans here. The girl smiled and averted her eyes, nodding at the suggestion. However, far from such innocent things were going on in the girl's mind. She was cursing the guy. Someone called out to Shen Haoyuan and asked him to come over. The man agreed and also gave his card to Vivian, saying she could call him any time. The girl blushed and clutched the card to her chest. She also said she was very happy. The man waved his hand and said he was free most of the time, but he had to go now. While the girl waved him goodbye, the man, or thinking about how it would be better if he had more of these kind of blank fans, Vivian made a more adequate face immediately after saying goodbye, and only thought about how easy it was. She also hoped that her friend could handle her part of the plan. At the same time, the protagonist and John Feng were standing outside the building and discussing something. John Feng said with a soft smile, "So well rested, and don't worry about your work." Yu-Ho waved her hand and thanked her for her trouble. Pretty soon, Yu-Ho was waving goodbye to her boss and saying goodbye. Vivian watched the couple and wondered if this was really her friend's goal. It wasn't long before the door to the heroine's apartment opened. From there, Vivian appeared and complained about their boss's injustice. The girl was saying that her target was at least beautiful, while the girl's own target only knew how to piss her off. Yu-Ho closed the book and called out her friend's name. Turning around, she asked her if she had ever seen Animal World. And he began to explain that the brighter their color, the more dangerous they are. With a serious expression on her face, she said what the organization had sent her here to do, a mission, not to play with toys. Vivian pouted at her friend's seriousness like that and got seriously pissed off. She exhaled afterward and told her to forget about it. Showing Shen Haoyuan's business card, the girl said that her task was done and asked what they should do next. Yu-Ho handed the girl the tablet and told her that this was her new data, and she needed to gain his trust as quickly as possible and eliminate suspicion of herself. With a squint in her eyes, the girl said, then she should just wait for the mouse to fall into the trap. At the same time, John Feng stood at the window sipping wine. Giles Gu turned to the president and asked if he went to the main character's house today. He also said that she only took the day off and he already feels like crap. The man took a sip from his glass and said she didn't look like someone who would take a vacation during a woman's malaise. Giles Gu took the hint and asked if he thought she had any secrets. He also asked if he'd found anything. John Feng looked out the window and pondered. Looking at the scenery, he said something about someone else living in her house. The next morning, the weather was beautiful. The sun was shining brightly, but the air was not stifling. Vivian had just woken up and yawned loudly. Yu-Ho was already sitting down to eat her breakfast at that time. She turned to her friend and asked how she had managed to become so lazy if she had only recently left the organization. The girl said that it was all for a reason, and Shen Haoyuan had chatted with her last night about everything. Poems, song, odes, whatnot. Chewing gum, the girl remembered there was something else. She remembered that he wanted to videotape her naked. Remembering this insult, the girl became very angry and started cursing the man, telling him to electrocute him. Yu-Ho squinted her eyes and said that the current was too merciful. She also told him to seduce him in the evening, because then he wouldn't be able to hold back. Vivian said that nothing could be kept from Amelia. She also said that they would have a meeting at 10 o'clock at night in room 555 of the Hotel Duguay. She bragged that he wanted to talk to her about life ideals and influencing us. Yu-Ho averted her eyes and said that everything was going according to plan. Holding out a piece of paper, she said she would try to finish all the business in the company as soon as possible. Standing up from the table, she said something that he should go ahead with the plan. It wasn't long before a deep night descended on the Doge Hotel. At the same time, a red car was passing through the roads at a fast speed. Yu-Ho and Vivian were sitting there. The main character said that if something goes wrong, she should try to protect herself and escape. She also said there was a spare car in the parking lot. Vivian winked at her friend and said she understood. It wasn't long before Yu-Ho was in the building across the street. She was opening the door to her room. Unlocking the door, the girl opened the door and entered her room. Once there, the girl looked around and began to consider the world out the window. As it turned out, there was the very same hotel. The girl squinted and began to prepare herself. Pretty soon she pulled out a professional camera and started filming what was going on in the other building. At the same time, Shen Haoyuan was in the 505th room, drinking a glass of wine. At the same moment, the doorbell knocked. Opening the door, Shen Haoyuan saw Vivian behind it, who said hello to him. The man said that she was finally here. At the same time, Yu Ho was filming the two on camera. The man hugged the girl sharply. The protagonists grinned evilly if she knew the fish was hooked. Trying to push the man away from her, Vivian asked who was doing that. Trying to reach my hands into intimate places. A man said that a deep connection starts from the body to the soul, which must be pure. Getting close to the girl's ear, the man also said that love is the best inspiration. Vivian asked the man if his article was written that way. However, Shen Haoyuan abruptly pushed the girl onto the bed and lay on top of her. He told her to believe that they were not doing it for intimacy, but for literature. Immediately afterward, the man roughly ripped open the girl's shirt and began to peer into what was there. Blushing, the man said he hadn't seen such a perfect body in a long time. Shen Haoyuan said that he would include her in his work because she was his muse. At the same time, the girl only tolerated the man diligently and hurried the protagonist in her thoughts. Once after that, Yu Ho said into the earpiece that mission accomplished. It turned out there had been a mini earpiece in Vivian's ear the whole time. The girl was relieved that it had finally happened. Immediately afterward, Vivian kicked the man's groin. At that moment, a distinct crunching sound was heard. As the girl rose, the man began squirming for more on the floor. Suddenly, the man felt something wrong, but didn't realize what it was. The girl closed her shirt and held out her open palm toward the man. Immediately thereafter, the man fell unconscious. Vivian wrinkled her nose in disgust and said it was a new medical drug, he would be the first to try it. At the same time, it was already deep into the night. Someone was moving at an incredible speed that even the trees were blurring in the background. As it seemed like all of this, Yu Ho and Vivian were driving home in a red car. Vivian told the protagonist not to worry because he was dizzy somehow and wanted to. The girl also said that he wouldn't remember anything when he woke up. At the same time, Shen Haoyuan had just woken up and was perplexed as to why he was in this hotel by himself. At the same time, Vivian went behind the protagonist's back and started interrogating her about what was going to happen next. Yu Ho, with a calm face, began to narrate. She squinted her eyes and said she would make this playboy suffer. Right after that, the girl pressed the gas pedal. Despite the fact that she was wearing heels, it did not prevent her from driving. Pretty soon they found themselves in their town. However, the car was being followed by an unknown man. He watched the car moving away into the distance. As it turned out, it was John Feng. Giles Gu asked him if he would go after them, to which the man said he would not. The man said that their actions are different from the information they have to wait and see the changes. At the same time, Shen Haoyuan grabbed his groin and pondered. He wondered if he had really overdone it yesterday, and for some reason it hurt so much. However, he realizes with confusion that he doesn't remember anything at all. At the same time, a delivery man knocked on his apartment door. He asked if Mr. Shen Haoyuan was here and said that he had an urgent package. Right after that, Shen Haoyuan opened the door and took the package. He wondered if it was some package from a fan again. Taking out a knife, he cut the tape on the box and wondered what was here this time. Upon opening the box, the man was scared to death. As it turned out, there was a recording of that very video of his mistress. There were also pictures of him and Vivian. Vivian's face was blurred, but it does not cancel the fact that the photos showed too wrong attitude to the girl. There were also pictures of the man pushing the girl on the bed. Not to mention that there were these pictures. There were also pictures of the man brazenly touching the girl's intimate parts. The man was extremely frightened because he really did not think that such a thing could happen. At the same time, reporters have already crowded around his apartment and tried their best to find out the details of what happened. At the same time, deep night had fallen. The weather was calm and quiet. Someone was taking the elevator to the 17th floor. It wasn't long before the bell rang to announce the arrival of the elevator. It turned out that Yu Ho was standing outside the door. However, she was extremely surprised at what she saw. Vivian was packing her drawers and apparently was getting ready to move out. Yu Ho leaned over to her and asked her if she was leaving. The girl said something happened to her daddy, so she had to leave. At the same time, the door to the protagonist's apartment opened. The disgraced woman gestured that everything was fine and her mission was accomplished. Yu Ho, meanwhile, was in a very bad state. While Vivian was patting the main character on the back and saying that she owed her, Yu Ho only sighed. Vivian finally noticed Amelia's strange condition after all. She walked up to the protagonist's face and asked about something she was thinking about. Amelia sighed once more. Yu Ho said her work is done and it's time for her to leave. Immediately afterward, she stood up and said she had to figure out a way to destroy the president as soon as possible. While Yu Ho poured herself some tea, Vivian asked in what way. Suddenly her eyes lit up and said she didn't really want there to go away. She said she could stay and reached out for a hug. Immediately afterward, however, she heard the sound of a cup breaking. As it turned out, the cup was broken right behind her. Vivian was very frightened. Yu-ho angrily told her to get out of here. Vivian jumped up and said that she would leave. With tears in her eyes, she asked what was going on after all. The heroine replied that nothing was happening. However, she also said that something happened this afternoon while she was at the company. She saw a girl with short hair flirting with the president. She approached him and seduced him in every way possible. At the same time, Yu-ho remembered how John Feng just a couple days ago pretended to be white and fluffy when he just handed over the tea. She remembered how she had hoped she would never see him again. In a bad mood, she thought that since the girl was flirting with him, she wasn't pretty enough for him, which pissed her off. Vivian said this is the usual behavior for such womanizers and shouldn't be surprised. She also said not to take it personally. The protagonist said it's not as simple as she thinks it is. She said that Jian Feng is not a simple womanizer. At the same time, she recalled the image of the president with a sly expression. Tears were pouring from somewhere. The girl called out for the boy named Xiaoxin and cried sorrowfully. She bit her lips and said no more, still in tears. She held out her hand and told him not to leave. Xiaoxin continued on his way even despite the girl's best efforts. The girl was still calling out to Xiaoxin. The man was walking along the road drenched in tears and paid no attention to the girl's cries. Suddenly, when the girl was almost touching it, a cracking sound was heard, stopping louder and louder until Xiaoxin cracked like glass. The girl only regarded the shards of glass in her hand, still in floods of tears. There was only one word in her mind: why? She began to sob even louder. Screaming with all her might, she asked him why he had left her. Unexpectedly, Yu-ho opened her eyes, sweating profusely. With an expression of detachment, she realized it was a dream, but that didn't help to calm her down either. Despite the protagonist's state of mind, the weather was beautiful. She thought that after all these years, this dream was still haunting her, and when would she finally get used to the betrayals? Get out of bed the main thing, or didn't think it was all irrelevant, and she was just tired. Putting a hand to her head, she thought she just needed to unwind. Stepping away from the bed, she thought she needed to get this mission over with as soon as possible. At the same time, the office had a great atmosphere. Yu-ho, after taking the weekend off, is finally back to work. Suddenly, the girl got her head back. As it turned out, Giles Gu and his sister were standing there. The sister pointed her finger at the main character and said that it was her. The girl pointed her finger at the main character and said she was the one who knocked her out. Giles Gu was swiveling his head between the main character his sister told the latter was the new assistant to the president. Giles Gu started to say that it wasn't some misunderstanding. Yu-ho bowed respectfully and said it was a pleasure to meet her. She also said that she was forced to do so in the last meeting and apologized to her. The girl was extremely surprised and asked again if she was really the assistant to the president now. Yu-ho leaned over to the girl and asked if she was really interested in how she did it. With a mischievous expression on her face, the girl said what she could tell her. The girl approached the protagonist. Suddenly, she felt as if she were a puppet issuing a question as to how this could be. With a shocked expression on her face, she wondered why and was so eager to listen to her. Yu-ho whispered her secret in her ear. After hearing this, the girl was very surprised and opened her eyes a lot. She turned around the protagonist, questioned if it was really true. Yu-ho winked and said truthfully. The girl was silent and thoughtful. Immediately afterward, she ran away from the company. Even her brother did not expect such actions on her part. She waved and ran toward the exit, saying goodbye to her brother. The man approached the protagonist and asked what she told her, to which the girl herself said it was a girly secret. The man waved his hand and told her to forget it. He also said he would go to the president. When the man said he should wait for him at the club, the main heroine squinted. The girl asked him, "Is Jian Feng not coming to the office today?" To which the man said that he had a business meeting today. Giles Gu waved his hand and said they would see each other later, since all the meeting time was coming up. Yu-ho smiled evilly and realized that this was her chance. In a blink of an eye, the protagonist found herself in her boss's office. She twisted the doorknob. At the same time as she opened the door, she began to look around to see if anyone was there. She realized that to study and understand a criminal, you had to know what he lived and breathed, and his office was the most important place to investigate. Walking into the office, she realized that she could find clues here. Opening the closet, Yu-ho thought that they were probably hidden somewhere. Suddenly, she heard a click in the distance. She realized someone was coming this way and turned around excitedly. John Feng called out the main character by name. He asked what she was doing here, opening the door. Yu-ho was startled and turned around. The man asked if his office was really that beautiful. The girl didn't know what to say, started stammering. As the man approached her, Yu-ho stepped back. Watching as the man got angry, she tried to calm down. Immediately afterward, the man slammed the wall and blocked the protagonist's escape route. The girl began to stammer and asked if he was back. Averting her eyes, the main character seemed to remember something. She started talking about how she wanted to surprise him mentally, looking at her bag. John Feng smiled and asked if the surprise was really what she had in mind. Yu-ho tried to push the president away from her and began to narrate. She had heard that the president's birthday was coming up, so she wanted to prepare a small gift for him. All this time she was looking at her bag, and John Feng decided to look at it too. Yu-Ho started to say that she was thinking about where to hide him, and then he came back. Yu-Ho said what he said scared him. At the same time, she remembered what Vivian had done before she left. Before leaving, the girl thanked the main character for sheltering her, and also said that she put her purse cool gift. The girl winked and said she was sure she'd love it. Digging through her bag, the protagonist prayed that the girl wouldn't let her down. At the same time, John Feng only watched the protagonist and pondered. Squinting his eyes, the man thought she was capable of being persuasive after all. The main character finally got the gift in her bag out. When she showed it to the president, she happily said it was him. Yu-Ho handed the gift to the president and prayed that her friend wouldn't let her down. Yu-Ho watched as John Feng opened the gift. It turned out to be a silly keychain with a piggy in a uniform. Both the protagonist and John Feng were very surprised by such a gift. The protagonist's face was covered with thick sweat, and she wondered what the heck her friend had given her this. John Feng looked at the girl and only thought about whether it was a hint that he was a bore she was sick of working here. Yu-Ho smiled awkwardly as she looked at the gift in the president's hands. The one was clearly furious and looked at the protagonist almost with contempt. He sternly told the protagonist to explain herself. Yu-Ho said that she hoped that John Feng would be happy every day some piggyback. Yu-Ho said with embarrassment to look at her face since she was so happy and started laughing embarrassedly. John Feng almost laughed. He looked at the main character and thought she looked discouraged, and that was really interesting. He also thought that she shouldn't disappoint him. The man said that if she put that meaning into the gift, then so be it, he would accept it. He smiled and said he hoped to remember to make time for his birthday. Quite soon, Yu-Ho with a strained smile was already outside the door. She was shaking all over and thought Vivian had let her down. Exhaling, she thought that thankfully the danger had passed. She also thought that she should be more careful in the future. Suddenly, a message arrived on the protagonist's phone. Yu-Ho immediately took it out of her pocket. Unlocking her phone, she opened that very message. It said there was an emergency situation. Yu-Ho opened her eyes wide with surprise. She let out a curse and realized things were bad. With a purposeful expression on her face, she realized it was time to solve problems. At the same time, there were noisy conversations in the company cafeteria. Someone slammed the table loudly and said that the man should help figure out some way to help her. Turns out it was Giles Gu's sister who was angry, saying that Yu-Ho was too cocky. The unknown man said unknowingly, thinking that Yu-Ho is her rival. Nikki only nodded frantically at the man's assumption. The man blushed and asked if when she met her, bad luck always happened to her. Nikki's eyes lit up and she said that Jarvis was completely right. Jarvis said the god of bad luck is after her, so she needs to change her fortune. The girl interrogated what the guy was talking about and what change of fortune was being talked about. Jarvis started to say that he just had a friend who was good in this field. The girl was extremely surprised by the guy's statement. Her eyes lit up and she asked if he was a reliable specialist. Jarvis said that, and he's known him for a long time. The girl said they should see each other right now. Jarvis squinted his eyes and said he should do it. It wasn't long before Nikki and Jarvis found themselves in the alleys. The girl began to wonder. She started asking about what this place was. The girl turned around often and was shivering. She asked if it was an abandoned area. She asked again how someone could open a store here and asked if they had taken a wrong turn. The man said that they must have taken the wrong way since the man often visits him. Pretty soon they came to a sign that said this was a fortune-telling house. Jarvis pointed to the sign and said they were already here. The girl found herself in front of the door and began to examine it. She noticed that the sign was far from being in the best condition. The doors were in the same condition. They creaked horribly, looking like two boards rather than doors. The girl started to stare back and said they looked too cheesy. Soon the man opened the door and came in. The man opened the door and said she was already allowed in. There were eerie curtains inside, and the girl only realized that it was too gloomy. Nikki began to tremble and put it into words. She started to stare and said she remembered she had an emergency. She quickly turned around and said she had to go and said she'd stop by here later sometime. However, the man grabbed her arm. The girl was extremely startled that the man had grabbed her arm and turned to him. And the man abruptly threw the girl to the floor and asked if she really wanted to leave. Pretty soon he closed the door with a loud slam. It foreshadowed something ominous. With a sinister smile, the man said it was getting late. As Jarvis approached the girl, she pivoted and asked what he was going to do. As curtains closed the door, the man only laughed and talked about how excited he was. With a wicked grin, he stretched his arms toward the girl and said that she had come here on her own and hadn't realized it would be like this. Nikki was already crying and said not to approach her because she is the sister of the vice president of the corporation. She also said that her brother wouldn't forgive him. However, the man only laughed and ripped the girl's shirt, who only shrieked. The man smiled and said how lucky he was that she was the little heiress. He also said he would get a lot of points. However, the girl hit the man's face and with such force that his glasses fell to the floor. The girl said with all her might to let her go. Despite the way the man's face distorted more and more, she said he was a monster. Out of desperation, the girl started beating the man and telling him not to come near her. She was saying with all her might that her brother would kill her. However, the girl's desperate attempts didn't do much to stop the man. He only threw the girl once more on the floor and swore. He calls her muddy words and asked if she was threatening him. At the same time, the girl lay on the floor from helplessness. She cried the whole never having been physically abused thing. Jarvis was saying who she was and what she hoped for. At the same time, the man took off his shirt and told her to spread her legs already. Grabbing the girl by the arm, the man was saying that she should be given a good whipping, and she shouldn't be so stupid. Suddenly, the man asked why the girl wasn't running away. The girl cried and couldn't say a word. As he got closer to the girl's body, the man started sniffing it and says she smells good. The man began to breathe heavily. He even told her to calm down, because he would make her feel bliss. The girl was already desperate, or that in her mind she hoped someone would help her. She began to sob for all her strength and thought only of how she wished someone would help her. Suddenly, someone kicked the door to the fortune-telling house, and kicked with such force that the door almost broke off. Jarvis clearly didn't expect such an outcome, that someone would stop him from abusing the girl. Yu-Ho in a tracksuit could be seen outside the door. The man, still lying on top of the girl, asked who the hell that was. The girl turned to the bespectacled man with anger. She literally screamed at him to get the hell out. Nikki remembered that this girl was the president's new assistant and called her by name. She was so moved that someone had come to rescue her that she cried. Not seeing the man's action, she hit him with such force that he flew to the other end of the room. Yu-Ho only tissed and headed towards the man. Taking off her jacket, Yu-Ho said he made her sick. After she took it off, she threw it over Nikki, covering her whole body. She also told her not to be afraid. The girl shrank back and was still crying. Yu-Ho told her to wait outside since she'll figure it out soon. Even though the girl couldn't hold back her tears, she still nodded in agreement. Right after the girl ran out, and from that place, Yu-Ho said that it was the man's turn. Placing her hands on her waist, the protagonist let out another whine as she approached the man. Wiping the spot where Yu-Ho hit him, Jarvis asked who he was anyway. Hitting him again in the other direction with such force that blood spurted from his mouth, Yu-Ho said that he, the trash, didn't need to know who she was. Stepping on the man, Yu-Ho began to question him. She asked him about the latest news of the Lixiang organization. She said that if he told her this information, she would consider forgiving him. The man was extremely surprised that the girl knew his organization and asked from where. Grabbing the man's hand, Yu-Ho said, "Rather idle chatter." Yu-Ho grabbed the man's hand and twisted it. She asked with a smile if he was the freak who gropes girls. The man was in pain and started to say that he would tell everything. He also said that he didn't know much because he was only a 6 in the organization. The girl was extremely surprised at what the guy said. She thought, if the 6s are so easy on rape, then what a horrible place this whole organization is. After the interrogation, the girl walked out of the building and thought for a moment. She realized that people perceive rape as a fun competition. As Amelia stood in a stupor, someone called out to her insistently. Nikki grabbed her pants and thanked the girl for saving her. The main character turned to her and told her not to worry. She stroked the girl's hair. Nikki was still crying. Leaning over to the girl, the protagonist said she wouldn't tell anyone anything. Still stroking the girl's head, she smiled and said that she wouldn't make an exception even for her brother and said. Nikki burst into tears even more. Crying on the girl's shoulder, Nikki was only talking about how scared she was. The girl, still lying on the floor, screamed in despair and from the experience. The main character wiped the girl's tears and told her not to cry. She said they were safe now. She wasn't afraid. She'd already said she'd drive her home. Wiping her tears, Nikki said she couldn't. The girl said she couldn't show up at home like that. Yu-Ho gently grabbed the girl's hand and said it was fine. She said she could spend the night at her place tonight, and she would let her brother know. Immediately afterward, the girl threw herself into the main character's arms and cried even more. Hugging the girl, Yu-Ho thought that there was just something she needed to know. Suddenly there was an innocent image of Vivian in the form of a rabbit. It wasn't long before the sound of water pouring in the bathroom was heard. The girl was washing herself under the running water, immersed in her thoughts. After a few minutes, the girl turned off the crane and was about to leave. Water ran down her hair, but the girl didn't care. Nikki called out to the main character. Yu-Ho turned around at the source of the sound. Averting her eyes and being in a seemingly normal state, Dashi washed herself and thanked that Yu-Ho had allowed her to stay the night. Yu-Ho poured tea into a cup and said, "You're welcome." Holding out the girl's cup, she said she liked it better when she was cocky arrogant. Sticking out her tongue, Nikki said not to laugh at her. Yu-Ho said they should forget about it now. However, right after that, Yu-Ho asked her how she met that idiot. With an expression of melancholy, the girl began to say that the last time Yu-Ho had said that Jian Feng had hired her as an assistant because he liked martial girls. Nikki sank into her memories. She remembered lying on the couch after she was very tired. Ken brother went up to her and asked how tired she was, and if she had been running around like crazy all day. Closed her eyes, the girl said that if it would help the president to like her, her efforts would pay off. Giles Gu asked why the president would want to do that. Nikki said that Amelia said he liked was and girls, so she was going to learn taekwondo. The girl began to say that once she gets a black belt, she will confess her feelings to the president. The man almost laughed. However, in the end, he couldn't contain his feelings. You laughed with all his might. He started to say that Yu-Ho was only joking and she took it seriously. While listening to this story, Yu-Ho asked if she really started practicing taekwondo. The girl said to stop laughing because it was actually a joke. However, after that, Yu-Ho decided to stroke the girl's head. She started saying that taekwondo is really good because girls need to know how to defend themselves. The girl began to say that if she had continued her studies, nothing would have happened to her. Lowering her eyes, the girl said that when she realized she had been pranked, she quit taekwondo and started surfing the internet to find a way to get revenge. She said she then unsuccessfully got into a chat room called Solutions to Women's Problems. She talked about being in this happiness. She met a guy, Lee Jarvis. She started saying that he was a sunny person, always listened to her, and sometimes made her laugh. Nikki said that after some time online she agreed to meet him. Remembering his face, she said he looked elegant and harmless in photos and videos, and she didn't expect her to seem like such an asshole. Remembering what the man had done to her, the girl once again reprimanded herself. Trying to reassure the girl, Yu-Ho said that everything is fine now and she shouldn't worry. The squint in Yu-Ho's eyes thought that she could never forgive these people. Our brother's sister said it was true, however, she began to turn to her. The girl said she saved her today. However, one dared to wonder if it was a coincidence. Yu-Ho shuddered at this question. Yu-Ho closed her eyes and said that of course it was a coincidence, and she thought she was very lucky. Yu-Ho grabbed the girl's shoulders and said it was getting late and it was time to go to bed because tomorrow was a hard day. Yu-Ho only reflected that the girl was extremely perceptive. Right afterward, Nikki wished the main character good night. At the same time, Yu-Ho waved goodbye to her and wished her good night as well. After the girl found out the information, she only exhaled in relief. Putting her hand to her chin, she thought that the girl was extremely lucky because she had met her. Immediately afterward, Yu-Ho began to recall the events of the day. She was in a restaurant at the time and was selecting a dessert from the menu. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice. It was Nikki saying that a certain Lee Kie should help her. But Yu-Ho lifted her gaze from the menu and looked at the source of the sound. As it turns out, literally right next to her were Nikki and an unknown man. Yu-Ho smiled softly and wondered if she had switched from the president so quickly. Still smiling, Yu-Ho wondered if that was her new boyfriend. Suddenly, however, she looked at the guy himself and was extremely surprised. A tattoo of a rose was visible from his collar. The girl started digging through her memories of what that tattoo could mean. She recalled how the organization said that recently the Donghua Playboy organization was hunting for girls, sparing no expense and all participants in methodology in the form of a rose. Yu-Ho remembered that particular one, or else she had seen in the information. The girl rose abruptly from her desk and slammed it down. Quickly gathering her things, she watched the company and thought Nikki was in danger. The girl decided to follow her to follow where the man would take her. As expected, Jarvis took her to a deserted place. The girl saw the very house divination heard screaming as Nikki was saying to let her go. Immediately hearing this, Yu-Ho swung at the door and kicked it open. Yu-Ho remembered what Jarvis had told her about this organization. The main character remembered the one telling all the details. She remembered the list of criteria for assigning points. There were such points as the rich or beautiful point about innocence, and many other things. The girl remembered looking at the list. The man told her that soon all the people in the top 5 would be honored to see the organizers to talk about their experiences in person. She remembered the man almost sobbing as he told her this information. Then the girl grabbed the man by the throat and asked for the meeting place, she to whom the man really didn't know him. Yu-Ho squinted her eyes and thought about it. She realized that since she had stumbled upon this organization, she would no longer sit around, planting her hands and waiting for the weather. At the same time, a loud party was going on in some club. A DJ was tuning up the music. She really was a party where people churned out like they never thought about the future. Expectedly, however, someone was dancing even at the pole. The girl was wearing black high-heeled shoes. She moved seductively all over the pole. And it seemed the whole thing was Yu-Ho. She danced there and mesmerized everyone present. She squinted and looked at the craziness around her. A great many people were cheering her on. However, the girl noticed a group of people sitting around a table talking and drinking wine. Someone from this company said that this dancer looked very attractive. Another said to look at her size, replied, and thought that a night with her would be unforgettable. One of the men said, "Who will go first?" At the same time, the man opened his eyes and laughed. One of the company stood up and waved his hand. He also apologized to them. The man told them to drink for now, and he would be the first to drink. The whole company laughed, and only one man remained silently staring at him. The same man started pouring wine for everyone. He raised his glass and made a toast. He congratulated him on winning this competition. One of the men in the company thanked him for his lessons, and after that, hunting for girls became much easier. Another said that if you do what Jack says, the girls will come to bed with you. The man said not to exalt him because they were brothers and told them to drink. Everyone made a toast. However, the man didn't take a sip because of what he heard Furious voice. As it turned out, the same with the man returned to the company and said that this girl wanted to remain a virgin. As soon as the man sat down, he said it, "Pretty woman is not going to get caught in the net." The rest of his companions laughed at him and said he was too young for this. They had already said that it was better that no one knew about it, or Jack's reputation would be ruined. The man shouted at them with rage and said it was easier said than done and told them to try it themselves. Suddenly, the same Jack came up and said he would try it. Jack raised his glass and said he would try it. Suddenly, the whole company said that this mere dancer was not worth his attention. He thought too highly of her. The man told them to relax because he just wants to stretch out this night. The man reflected that the one who matched the protagonist was ranked second in the rankings for the day. The man smiled, for he was interested in the girl he had failed with. In the meantime, the party at the club continued. Yu-Ho got off the pole and sat down at the bar. Suddenly, the same man approached her while Yu-Ho was enjoying her drink. He called the bartender over and said he needed a glass of Manhattan. What a lady it is. Jack turned to the main character and said she was the first girl in his life who liked Manhattan. The girl looked at the man and was extremely surprised. Immediately after, she smiled softly and realized in her mind that he had finally arrived. Squinting, the woman asked if he'd decided to buy her martini. The guy waved his finger and said that no, he wasn't going to do that because the martini was too high, and the grasshopper was just right for girls. Yu-Ho touched that very man's hand. She squinted her eyes and said he was very cute. Approaching a guy, she said he was better than those guys who only want to get her drunk. The two people were chatting casually as Yu-Ho didn't hear her name. She was extremely surprised at the familiar voice and wondered why he was here. Jianfeng stood next to some girl and glared fiercely at her coworker. She looked at the president's face, which only expressed anger. She got up from her seat and said hello to the president. Looking at the girl, Yu-Ho said that apparently they have similar ways of having fun. Jianfeng said that tomorrow would be a very important meeting, and she should rest because a good rest would maximize her ability to avoid mistakes at work. At the same time, the girl who was standing next to the president looked at the company. Yu-Ho started crying herself and said that Jianfeng is completely right. She also said that there was a pretty girl standing next to him and he should take good care of her. In her thoughts, she wanted to beat up the president and only spoke of how dare he say anything after he himself had bought into her beauty. The girl took the president's hand and called him brother. She snuggled up to him and asked if he wanted to show her something. Placing a finger on her lips, she said she couldn't wait any longer. Jianfeng smiled softly at the woman and said that they should go. In thought, he thanked Nina the whole he had almost forgotten about his work. Yu-Ho only watched the company walk away from the bar table. In her thoughts, she glared furiously at her boss and thought that once again, Jianfeng was flirting with girls. Suddenly, Jack coughed and drew attention to himself. Yu-Ho almost jumped because she had forgotten all about him. The man smiled mischievously and asked if she was interested in that guy. Yu-Ho turned to her interlocutor and said that no way, because he was her boss, and it was a bit awkward to meet him here. She also said that she was afraid of being scolded at work. At the same time, she thought that Jianfeng had almost put the entire workplace under a cloud. Jack approached the girl and asked how it was possible to scold such a beautiful and elegant girl. Amelia pinched Jack's sleeve and said he was flattering her. Suddenly, Jack grabbed her arm. In a seductive voice, he said he could talk for her at least all night long. Approaching the protagonist's face, he offered to be her friends. Yu-Ho and the man realized that the fish was caught in the net. At the same time at the hotel, the same Nina was talking to her boss. She was saying that the South was unstable right now. In a monotone voice, she said that San Wu Bang and Mo Yuntang had had another scuffle. The man closed his eyes and said that she should tell Giles Gu about it right away in the future. The man squinted his eyes and said that if there was nothing else, she could go. The woman asked if Jianfeng wanted her to find out something about the main character. The woman squinted her eyes and wondered. In her thoughts, she told herself that this was the first time she had ever seen her boss lose control over a woman. She remembered the way he almost shook with anger. Coming out of her stupor, Nina heard the rejection from her boss. Jianfeng said that he would deal with her himself. The man smiled softly and thought of the main character. It wasn't long before Jianfeng was reviewing the documents in his office. Yu-Ho stood next to him and waited for Jianfeng to solidify them. The man said that she had some urgent matters to take care of. Yu-Ho confirmed this with a slight blush on her face. When Yu-Ho was about to leave the office, the president stopped her. Yu-Ho smiled and turned to the president and asked if he wanted anything else. Unexpectedly, Jianfeng also stood up from his seat and said that she should never visit such places in the future. Squinting his eyes, he said those locations included last night's club. Yu-Ho got really angry and asked what that meant. She said that she could go anywhere in her free time from work. The woman continued that he had no right to interfere in her personal affairs. Jianfeng only swallowed silently. Immediately afterward, he turned back to his seat without saying anything. Turning around, Jianfeng told her to deal with her work first. Yu-Ho bowed and said that she would do it. Right after Yu-Ho left the office, she began to grumble. The girl was really pissed off by the president's behavior. She only talked about how strictly he restricts everyone, while he himself behaves as he pleases. At the same time, Jianfeng only wondered what it was with him and why he was so unperturbed. Suddenly, the screen of the phone of the main heroine lit up because she received a message. Looking at the message, as it turned out, it was from Jack asking if she was free this weekend. The main character seemed to smile and only asked if he was so impatient. The girl typed that she couldn't wait. With a gregarious expression on her face, she sent this message already anticipating this weekend. Yu-Ho looked off into the distance and thought about the fact that it was to her advantage because the sooner he would go to hell. The weather was beautiful this weekend. Yu-Ho only laughed and said that she didn't think they would go straight to the rides. She said that she hadn't been here since elementary school, and it brought back fond memories for her. At the same time in her mind, she was just thinking about how corny she was being. Jack only smiled and said he hoped she was happy. Fixing the main character's hair, he said that she looks really cute when she smiles. Immediately afterward, Yu-Ho grabbed the man's arm. After that, she smiled shyly and thanked him because it had been a long time since she had been to an amusement park. The man only smiled and thought to himself that he expected too much from her. He thought that Yu-Ho was only naive and inexperienced. The girl said that the man was not the first to bring her here. Immediately afterwards, the man asked who was the first. In his mind, he only thought that he would show her a beautiful world full of bright colors and let her make the most sincere vows. It wasn't long before the couple took her for a ride. Immediately afterward, the pair found themselves at a children's carousel where Jack was taking pictures of the main character. The man gave her a bear cub and thought he would act like a little kid to instill in her the right idea of true love, because it always works. After a while, the main character was inflating soap balls, and Jack was watching her. At the same time, Yu-Ho only thought that this naive girl game was actually very intense. While she was having fun, she thought she was about to fall asleep. Pretty soon it started to get dark. Yu-Ho talked about how happy she was today. She approached the man and thanked him. Jack said it was too soon to thank him because he had a cheap gift for her, and he asked if she wanted it. Yu-Ho only looked at the man and waited to see what he would say next. Yu-Ho began to falter, and in her thoughts she thought about the fact that he was finally starting to show his face in the first date before midnight, and the head of the organization clearly lacks patience. Suddenly a message rang out. It was the protagonist's. Yu-Ho pulled out her phone and saw that her boss texted her that he had an urgent matter, and she needed to get back to him as soon as possible. Yu-Ho was trembling with anger because she had just managed to accomplish what she had started. Yu-Ho sighed and thought about what to say next. The girl started to say she was sorry, turning an innocent face to Jack. Yu-Ho says her friend is here for work and she needs a ride, and that she should be on her way. Jack says it's no big deal because they'll still have time. Yu-Ho winked and said to save her surprise for her. She waved her hand and said she was already running. Jack waved goodbye, wishing the girl good luck. The man squinted his eyes and thought that being in a hurry on a hunt could only get in the way. Pretty soon, Yu-Ho was standing outside the office building. She looked up to the very top. The girl thought about it and realized that her main target was Jianfeng, after all. Pretty soon, the girl found herself on the 23rd floor. The girl was in the elevator looking at the messages on her phone. As it turned out, the supervisor said she had to go up on the roof as soon as she arrived. The girl looked up to see that it was now 6 minutes to 12. The girl was worried because she didn't know why the boss would call her to the roof so late. Arriving on the 88th floor, the protagonist only thought that already he had learned something about her. The doors slowly opened, and the main character decided that she would just meet him first, and then she would know what he had in store for her. Looking in the distance, Yu-Ho saw a man standing on the roof. She approached the president and asked if something serious had happened since he had asked her to come at such a time. Jianfeng was looking at the stars at the time, and said that today's celestial looked good. Yu-Ho only got angry at such philosophical statements. With fury, she thought he was only interfering with her work. The girl asked if the important thing he was talking about was starry sky. At the same time, the man looked at his watch. It was already 5 minutes past 1. With a smile on his face, the man said it was about to begin. Immediately after that, medium-loud explosions sounded outside. Yu-Ho looked at the source of the sound. As it turned out, they were explosions from fireworks. Yu-Ho was mesmerized as she watched the amazing action. Her eyes were literally glowing. Yu-Ho even managed to forget about the person beside her and said out loud that it was very beautiful. Jianfeng said that if she liked it, he could ask the workers to continue running. Yu-Ho asked the president why he suddenly called her to watch fireworks. Jianfeng coughed and was covered in sweat from the girl's question. Yu-Ho just wondered if he could help her. The man said that the fireworks factory is interested in their investment, and this firework is a sample of their product. He also said that the heroine is here for evaluation. The woman was worried, but she accepted the situation. She thought that she was thinking too much, or that he was trying to put her on guard with this performance. However, the girl only stared at the fireworks silently, covered in a slight blush. At the same time, Jian Feng looked at the reaction of the main character. Jian Feng, seeing that she liked it, smiled and covered in blush. He thought he would tell them personally to buy the fireworks factory tomorrow. The girl asked the president if she had something on her face. Jian Feng fixed her hair and said that there was nothing wrong there. Pulling her hair away from her face, he said her hair was ruined by the wind. With a smile on his face, he asked if she was happy. Yu Ho said that yes, it is true. She also said that she's always happy when she sees something beautiful. The man squinted his eyes and said that when the girl was happy, he was happy too. Yu Ho reacted sharply to those words and turned to the president. She remembered the guy saying the same words. She remembered how happy Xiaoxin was that he had found her. Xiaoxin held out a lollipop to the girl and said that he brought this for her. The girl said that about everything they take, they have to tell Auntie Li and she can't accept his gift. Immediately afterward, Xiaoxin tucked the main character's cheek and called her a little silly girl. Xiaoxin said that it is just candy if she eats it. She wouldn't tell anyone that she took it. However, the girl looked at the guy with sincere eyes and said that if he gave the candy to her, he would have nothing left. Xiaoxin stroked the main character's head and said that everything was fine. Right afterward, he said that when she's happy, he's happy. In doing so, the boy's face was superimposed on the president's face. The girl blushed sharply and was very surprised at this. She immediately jerked her hand away from her, rejecting the man's kindness. She backed up and ordered him to move farther away. Squinting her eyes, Yu Ho said that if he really wanted to make her happy, it was simple. Yu Ho started to say that a raise and increase in her salary would suit her just fine, and if he had no more business, then she was off. Jian Feng only looked at the girl in bewilderment. Yu Ho turned around and asked her to apologize. As Yu Ho walked towards the exit, Jian Feng wondered if he had said something wrong. At the same time, it was already deep night outside. Immediately after Yu Ho left the building, Giles Gu went up to the roof and addressed the president. Keeping his hands behind his head, the guy asked why. The assistant left so pissed off, did he really get her? The guy said he had to stay late into the night because of his order, and he also asked what the result was. The man asked if he should teach the man how to woo girls. With a wink, Giles Gu asked why. He told her it was a job if they had specially prepared fireworks for her. After listening to his brother's babble, Jian Feng told him to shut up because it was none of his business. The man turned around and asked to express his gratitude to Nikki. Giles Gu was surprised that her name had come up in conversation. Meanwhile, Jian Feng recalled what had happened a few hours before. The president's phone rang. The girl who called him was on his record as a trashy girl, and Jian Feng was only guessing what she wanted from him. However, I wish the scale would yell into his phone that terrible things are happening. The girl was sitting behind some bushes at the time and called the president. She said that she saw Amelia and a handsome man having fun at the amusement park, and it looked like they were having fun. The girl had already started to say what the president should do, but he interrupted her and said that she was a quick learner. Immediately after that, he hung up the phone. The president sighed and thought about what could be done. He raised an eyebrow and wondered why he had her doing such ridiculous things. Meanwhile, the next night, Yu Ho found herself in a beautiful restaurant. The man said a toast, and after that they had a sip of wine. Yu Ho said that she heard that tables at that restaurant are reserved months in advance. She also said that they didn't know each other back then, so who was he going out with? The man twiddled his finger and said she was wrong. Smiling, Jack said that back then Yu Ho said she wanted to have a European dinner, so he partied. Yu Ho giggled and covered herself with a blush. She said that he had really made an effort. She felt that way about it. She then took a sip from her glass and said she was drinking first as punishment. The man only smiled wickedly, because he realized that she had loosened up and apparently she was interested in him, so he could probably do it today. At the same time, the waiter brought Yu Ho's steak and she thanked him for it. Tried it in a bite. She said it was delicious to her too. The man took a piece and to himself said he was glad she liked it. Suddenly the man felt something unusual and wondered about it. It was Yu Ho who touched his leg under the table. She asked if that was really the case. Smiling seductively, she said she really didn't like it. The man his mouth and thought that before she seemed to him a cold and strong girl, then now she seems a little greedy kitty. The man on the glass in her hand, and asking if she was free tonight, saved that surprise for her. The woman started twirling her hair and said that if he wanted it, she was ready anytime. The man smiled evilly and only thought it was an incredible rush. Immediately afterward, Yu Ho and Jack were at the hotel, and the man thought he would take her soon. The girl lay on the bed and said she felt dizzy. The man put his hand on the bed and called the heroine a little wildcat. Laying on top of the main character, he asked if she couldn't wait for Yu Ho to unravel his tie. The man said he would take it here. However, something unexpected happened that even the man shrieked. The girl tipped the man down and called him an affectionate name. Putting his finger on his lip, she asked him if he wanted to play something. While Yu Ho grabbed the man's tie, Jack asked what she wanted to play. Yu Ho smiled and said that she didn't like it. But what can you do? Suddenly, Jack opened his eyes and was greatly surprised. However, literally immediately his eyes clouded over and began to close. A few seconds later, the man was already sleeping peacefully. It was Yu-Ho who reached out her hand and activated her ability. Immediately afterward, Yu-Ho took the phone out of the man's pocket while he was sleeping. She easily unlocked her phone and looked at the man's message. She saw a man texting someone named Liu Xian to send him the latest list of names. The man texted him without 15.5, however it was already quite late. Yu-Ho squinted after all well thought this game wouldn't end soon. Right after that, Yu-Ho moved away from the guy and thought about what she should do next. Looking at the sleeping and unsuspecting man, she realized that she had to get a list of the names of these bastards. Later the next afternoon, Yu-Ho was in her boss's office. She stood in front of him and showed him the documents. The supervisor handed the document back to her. Suddenly there was a loud rumble at the door. Yeah, Marshall's brother's sister walked into the office and headed straight for Amelia. She grabbed her hand and said she had something important to show her. Yu-Ho was very surprised by this behavior while the girl was saying that she should go with her. John Feng coughed to get people to pay attention to him. He told the girl to be sensible as she led the protagonist away from the office. John Feng sighed and said that Yu-Ho was working to keep her busy. Waving her finger, the girl told the president not to forget since he owed her. John Feng was about to say something, but he had no words left. Our brother's sister told the protagonist to go, or else it would turn out that the man didn't keep his promise. The man sighed once more and asked if the main character wanted to go. Yu-Ho said that she would always be happy to help Nikki. The office door then closed with a loud slam, and the company headed away. The man stroked his chin and wondered why they had become so close. Right after the girl drank the main character out of the building, she was literally glowing with happiness. The girl saluted the protagonist and said she did exactly what she told her to do. However, right after that, she asked why she had asked her to be the one to pick her up from there instead of just asking for time off. Knock the girl on the head, Yu-Ho said that the curious barbarian in the bazaar had her nose ripped off and told her not to pry any further. She winked at the girl and told her to remember that everything that happened today was a secret. The girl lit up and said that there was no problem and she would keep her mouth shut. At the same time, Yu-Ho only thought that she couldn't leave the workplace too often because she might lose the president's trust. The girl watched Yu-Ho walk away and waved her goodbye. The girl thought she just had to admit something. Still looking at the main character, Nikki saw Yu-Ho waving goodbye to her. She realized that it was a woman like Amelia who could be a worthy support for her brother. The girl was extremely upset by this realization. She only thought about what she had left to do while the wind caressed her hair. Suddenly, that one decided she had no choice but to support them and turned on fangirl mode. After a while, Yu-Ho was already on the road in her red car. The main character was decently dressed and brought her sunglasses with her. Thinking about it, Yu-Ho realized that Jack was sick and she could take this chance to visit him. Pretty soon, she was outside Jack's house looking in the windows. She got out of the car and stopped, looking up. Twirling her curls, Yu-Ho thought that she had heard about the Don Juan conducting their training courses, the price of which was quite high. Walking into the villa, Yu-Ho thought that similar to many men want to become playboys. At the same time, Jack was lying in his bed coughing incessantly. Yu-Ho exclaimed, for she had not expected to see Jack in such a state. The man himself was surprised to see Amelia here. The main character quickly approached the man and asked how he was feeling. The man laughed and said it was just a cold. He was started to say that she shouldn't have come here as Yu-Ho put her hand on his forehead. In an agitated voice, she said he had been very careless. Yu-Ho said that he shouldn't have been so careless about even the slightest illness and handed him a glass of water. The man thanked the main character for such a gesture of goodwill. The man said he probably had a stomachache and asked me to bring a heating pad from his office. Yu-Ho heard the word cabinet and immediately realized that important documents were most likely stored there. The man pointed in the direction of his office and said that's where he was. Yu-Ho stood up and said it's okay, she'll do it. The girl saw the empty water glass and calmed down. She smiled softly and thought the list of names would probably be just that. Stepping back into the office, and Yu-Ho told him to wait a bit. The man watched, and then as Yu-Ho retreated to his office, he squinted into his eyes and realized he could spring into action. Grandpa found himself in the doorway. She opened the door abruptly and entered the room with a rush. She began to look around quickly because she had to hurry to find the list of names. The main character concentrated very hard because she had to get it. She started looking for the document in every possible place. Unexpectedly, Yu-Ho turned her attention to the dresser. Opening one of the nightstands, she realized that was how she'd found this list of names. However, something happened that Yu-Ho didn't expect because a man was smoothly approaching the open door. Yu-Ho finally found the very list of names of the organization. She was extremely pleased with her find and immediately started looking at them. However, the girl did not take into account that someone might be standing behind her back and began to quietly look through the documents. Suddenly, the man grinned. Yu-Ho was sharply surprised to hear a voice saying that he shouldn't have underestimated her. The man called the main character a little wildcat from the wolf huntresses. Yu-Ho was very surprised by the voice from the back. A couple of minutes earlier, Yu-Ho had found a list of names of organizations and was extremely excited about finding. What she didn't expect, however, was that it could all just be a trap that had been built. The man said he shouldn't have underestimated her and called her a little wildcat of a wolf hunter. Yu-Ho abruptly turned around to the source of the sound, fearfully looked at him. Standing in the doorway was Jack, leaning against the doorframe. She called out his name sharply. The man said angrily that she was very quick to show her true nature and asked if all wolves were so impatient. Yu-Ho didn't know what to say and only clucked. Yu-Ho decided to play innocent and asked what he was talking about. Turning her head sweetly, she said she didn't know what the man meant. At the same time, however, she squinted her eyes and wondered how he knew she was a she-wolf. Watching the guy's actions, Yu-Ho put the list of names in her bag, trying not to attract his attention. Yu-Ho watched the man and misunderstood something. She remembered slipping him some sleeping pills to make her mission more successful. Many questions ran through her mind, including why he was still conscious. Yu-Ho realized that maybe he trivial didn't drink the water, and got really scared about it. The man asked with an evil grin what was wrong, and wondered if she was wondering why he didn't pass out. He grabbed the protagonist by the face and pulled her closer to him. He said he'd tell her because he just didn't drink it. He started to tell her that he had pretended to be sick to trap her, and asked if she was surprised. Yu-Ho shook the guy's hand off her and told him to stop. She also asked when he started to suspect her. Jack started to tell me that it happened back at the hotel. In that hotel in the early morning, Yu-Ho was sleeping peacefully next to a man. Suddenly, with a headache, the man opened his eyes. He put his hand on his head, trying to sort out his thoughts. At the same time, Yu-Ho was surprised that he was already awake and wished him good morning. The girl began to tell him that he had been very wild yesterday. At the same time, the man was extremely surprised by what Yu-Ho said. With a flushed face, the girl said that she thought she couldn't take it anymore all this time being attracted to the man. The man hugged the protagonist and asked if she could barely stand it and what he could do for her now. The man said it's all very strange because he doesn't remember anything about last night, and he should look at the video. The man started saying that they have a habit of hiding a camera in the hotel room beforehand and recording video of the entire sex act, which is necessary to get points. The man smiled even wider and showed the disc. He asked the girl to guess what he saw on the tape. The man was still narrating that after he fell asleep himself, Yu-Ho packed her things and packed away from the room. He said she unceremoniously left without saying anything. In the end, the girl came back and only the next morning and just lay in his bed. Yu-Ho tisked her tongue and realized that all her plans had been revealed. She abruptly threw back the disc the guy was holding in his hands. The man only stood up from the unexpected blow and tried to look at the main character. She said that since he already knew everything, she wouldn't have to pretend in front of him anymore and got into a fighting stance. The man knew right away that she had enough skill and should not be underestimated. At the same time, Yu-Ho tried to strike with her headlights while he was dodging. For a while she did just that and elbowed the guy in the cheek. She struck with a force that the man immediately found himself the other side of the room. Yu-Ho mockingly smiled at her, said, "How could such a weakling be the leader of the Don Juan?" The man called the main character tried to get up as he immediately fell to the floor. Yu-Ho walked up to the man and told him to wonder because today was the day he and his scum would pay for everything. The man grinned evilly and asked if she was really that proud of it. He abruptly pressed a button on some strange device that suddenly reached into his pocket. Yu-Ho realized that she had miscalculated, underestimating the guy, while he was asking if she had any idea who was behind them. The man started towards the exit and said that she had definitely brought wrath upon herself so she would die and started laughing hysterically. The man kept trying to move away from the protagonist and thought she was going to get it all now. Pretty soon she seemed near the very door and thought this was his chance. And so Yu-Ho grabbed him by his shirt and lifted him up so he wouldn't run away. The girl asked if he and the other women were so bad at socializing too. Immediately afterward, the woman threw him the other way, and the guy cried out in pain. The man started yelling for help and calling for some guys. Yu-Ho crunched his knuckles and said that he should shout louder while the guy was even more scared. She said otherwise only the girls he cheated or hurt would hear it. It wasn't long before Yu-Ho had completely beaten the man. Suddenly, someone in the doorway started calling for Jack. The guy, completely beaten up, couldn't even be happy to be protected. A group of men stood in the doorway and asked excitedly what had happened to him. A man pointed to the main character and asked how it was possible that he had been beaten up by a girl. She tisked and said this guy was sneaky enough to ambush him and let the man go. Right after she did, the man walked up to his bodyguards and thought she had underestimated him. At the same time, Jack was pointing at the main character and saying that she was the one and ordered her to get in on it. One of the bodyguards asked if he really paid them because of one girl. Jack said to stop talking and said he would increase the fee. He also said that it would only be possible if they destroyed her. One of the bodyguards smiled evilly. Immediately afterward, he told his brothers to get started. Yu-Ho realized that she wasn't the best situation and was scared enough. Jack grinned and said it would be fun. He remembered something that happened 3 days ago. Then an unknown broker had stood in the passage of the alleys. Jack approached him and offered him a cigarette. He also said he had a big case and asked if he had any free time. Brokers took a cigarette and said he had some free time. While the man smiled, the broker said that if there is money, there will be chairs. Jack said someone wanted to ruin his life. He asked to look into it. He said it was an order and showed the price with his fingers. He also asked if they would take that kind of charge for it. The man exhaled the smoke from his cigarette upon hearing the offer. He said that would do and handed the man a device with a button. He said he would settle down with Adu and his boys outside the room and pointed to the device. He said that as soon as he lives on the red button, they will come running right away. At the same time, Yu-Ho was confronting a group of men. She was clearly having a hard time. The girl grinned and asked if they really thought they could beat her. However, responding to the protagonist's statement, one of the men said not to overestimate himself and pulled up next to the girl. However, Yu-Ho easily slapped the man's chest and then motioned away from herself and asked in a really girly way. Immediately afterwards, she kicked the other man and threw him to the other end of the room. At the same time, the broker was sufficiently intimidated by the power of the protagonist since he saw that she could easily handle his gang. The man really tensed up thinking she had them right strong. It wasn't long before he ran to the girl and thought he wouldn't feel sorry for her. The man slapped her back and Yu-Ho cried out in surprise. It wasn't long before she cried out in pain once more as the blow was quite strong. The girl was whisked off to the back of the room where she was already reprimanded from the situation. The girl closed one eye and wondered if this time it would end in failure because so much had not yet been done. Suddenly, the broker froze in bewilderment. Jack opened his eyes in surprise because he didn't expect this. Yu-Ho looked and was also surprised at this kind of situation. A white-haired man with red eyes and a mask stood at the entrance. Everyone present wondered who he was. The broker immediately recognized that it was a certain Ming and raised an eyebrow in surprise. He wondered why Brother Min had come here, and even wearing a mask. He scratched himself and asked what he was doing here. As the man regarded the broker with a calm expression, the man tried to say he was with a guy and would finish his part-time job in a minute. Suddenly, the man beckoned the broker over to him. The one not realizing what was being asked of him approached the man unsuspectingly. Suddenly, he was hit hard by that very man's care. The guy's look was very serious and full of rage. The broker was not surprised at this action on his brother's part and held the wound with his hand. The one with a serious expression asked how dare they touch her. Min asked with a serious look on his face if they really thought they could lay a finger on her, and if he had any idea who was behind her. The man asked who she was and asked if he could tell. Min only got even more angry and looked at the broker with a judgmental look. He asked angrily if he wanted to die early, because he was taking so many questions. The broker immediately apologized because he realized his mistake. Min looked at his watch and said he'd give him and his team a minute to get out of here. The broker bowed and told him not to be angry because they were leaving. The broker abruptly told his whole gang to leave. Jack was unhappy with this turn of events, for he had already paid for the protection of his soul. He started looking around and asked them to wait. The guy grabbed his arm at the broker and asked what was even going on. The man started to say that they weren't done yet. However, the broker shook off Jack's hand and said that's what they hired him for. He said he almost killed them all and looked at the guy with a judgmental look. Immediately afterward, he looked at the main character and thought very hard. Yu-Ho was still supporting her hand, not understanding what was going on. However, the man realized that if Min didn't want to reveal her surroundings, then she was definitely not someone they should mess with. Immediately afterward, the man walked off in the direction of the doors and left the protagonist alone with the others. At the same time, Yu-Ho really didn't understand what was going on and wondered. She looked at the white-haired guy and thought hard, sneaking glances at him. She was just thinking about what he could be. Immediately afterward, the girl realized that they were alone there. Jack realized the same thing. At that time, he realized that this was his chance while Yu-Ho scattered and was going to escape through the window. However, Yu-Ho caught the fugitive in time and asked where he had gone. The girl immediately threw the guy to the floor and he cried out in pain. She stepped on the man and asked if he had any more aces up his sleeve. Yu-Ho said with a serious expression on her face that these people were not so simple she would not pursue them. She thought that the first thing to do was to deal with Jack, and then everything else. At the same time, a white-haired man was standing after the car with Nina. Bowing to the girl, he said he had done what she asked him to do. The girl only hummed when she heard the task had been completed. She squinted her eyes and told him to be careful with his guys because there was no guarantee they would be intact after the next meeting. The man furrowed his eyebrows and asked who was behind her after all if the girl wasn't the first, who came to him personally. However, he didn't finish his sentence. The girl interrupted the guy and asked if in so many years he had never been able to learn the rules. She said he should keep his mouth shut on calls and knowing a lot would be detrimental. The girl wondered why the president was attracted to Yu-Ho because she didn't think he could take anyone seriously. Immediately after this one, the girl got in her car and told the guy to keep the incident a secret. She reminded him once again that his guys should keep their mouths shut. The man remained silent but still agreed with the girl's words. After the car drove away, Min watched the receding traffic. After a while, the weather outside the president's office was beautiful. John Fung himself was sitting on the sofa and browsing through the newspaper journal. Suddenly, Giles Gu came up to him and mischievously asked why he hadn't gone to rescue her himself. Here he winked and said that she could get the brightest feelings for him if he were her knight. With an annoyed face, John Fung watched Giles Gu, who was hanging from the sofa. The man closed the magazine, said he only saved her because of work, not personal reasons, and told the guy not to imagine. The man folded his arms and said that he knew that, but he also said that they could have done it themselves. John Fung replied that if it was him who had saved her, then Yu Ho would have immediately realized that John Fung was behind it. Squinting his eyes, John Fung said that they would absolutely be exposed then. Suddenly, the president's cell phone lit up and he got a text message. As it turned out, Fulan said the task was done, but something happened to the main character. The man was extremely nervous because he thought something had happened to the main character. He unlocked his phone and thought excitedly who would harm such a smart and spoonable woman. Suddenly, the image of the main character appeared before his eyes, and he could not understand how it was possible. Immediately afterward, John Fung opened his messenger and read the entire message. It said that Fulan finished the mission, but Yu Ho seems to be injured. Giles Gu noticed the president's mood change and asked what was wrong. The man began to clutch the phone with all his strength and said to hand over this matter to Xialan. After all, Don Juan is not so simple. Giles Gu, with a calm face, asked where he got that interest from, and wondered how John Fung realized that Amelia was in danger. John Fung sank into his memories as soon as Giles Gu asked this question. Well remembered sitting in the chair as usual, and Nina saying that everyone was fine and there were no problems. However, the girl said she saw someone communicating with the informant. John Fung inquired and asked the girl who it was. Nina told the president to remember that time they were at the club. She squinted her eyes and asked if John Fung remembered the guy next to the main character and said that it was him. Jian Feng was extremely surprised and immediately remembered the entire picture. He folded his arms and said it was up to her and she should report everything to him. Immediately afterward, the president abruptly got up from the couch, determined. Jian Feng thought that something was wrong here. The entire Don Juan leader couldn't possibly turn out to be such a coward. A while later, Yu Ho held out the papers to her president. She said that he needed to sign the papers, and Jian Feng thought about it. At the same time, Giles Gu was in the office playing with some toy. The man said they respect the business trip for a week, and everyone will have a paid vacation during that time. Yu Ho was surprised enough but said she understood. She thanked the president. At the same time, Giles Gu wondered if John Fung had become attached to her. The protagonist's face covered with a slight blush, and she said that if that was the end of it, she would go. At the same time, Yu Ho was only thinking about what John Fung was up to. Taking in the paperwork, the girl only wondered what kind of job it was that he was keeping away from. Jian Feng watched as Yu Ho retreated to the door and thought that she seemed to be all right. At the same time, Giles Gu showed the president's thumb and said that love makes people better. The guy said that he never liked to lie, but for the sake of giving the girl a good rest, John Feng came up with such an excuse and started laughing at him. At the same time, the president's face was covered with a slight blush. With a momentary fit of rage, he threw a stack of papers at his younger brother and told him to shut up. With a serious expression on his face, he said that Yu Ho is the most important cog in his plan, so he can't let her get hurt. The man also said that he can't appear in the company during her vacation. Right after that, John Feng took the toy from Giles Gu and said that he would confiscate it, to which the guy was extremely displeased. With irritation, the man said that all company affairs were now his responsibility and tossed the toy far away. At the same time, Giles Gu God was making it look like everything was gone for him and saying it wasn't his fault. Yu Ho, when she returned to her home, was extremely surprised as soon as she opened the door. Behind the seat, Vivian was lying down and eating chips. With crumbs on her face, the girl stood up from her chair and shouted the name of the main character. Yu Ho, though she was happy to see her friend, but she asked how did she get here. The girl said that Yu Ho is pretty well known here, so she took advantage of that and said she was her sister. Yu Ho sat down at the couch and asked if the she-wolves had sent her here or not. Vivian sat in the chair too and said it was true. She started saying that Don Juanas were disgusting, and especially the very list of names she'd gotten so huge that the wolves would now have to break her head. Yu Ho put her hand on her forehead and said that she had already thought about it. But they can't act rashly so after the organization decides everything. At the same time, Vivian smiled softly as she saw the reaction of the main character. She clearly cheered up and said that there was one piece of news that Yu Ho definitely didn't expect. The girl said that Auntie Shan was already here, to which Yu Ho opened her eyes wide with surprise. Pretty soon it was deep night. Auntie Shan sipped her tea while at the protagonist's home. Auntie Shan is the right hand of the leaders of the Wounded Wolves organization. Right now, she was in the main character's living room and was quietly sipping tea. At the same time, the click of the door opening was heard. Outside the door were Yu Ho and Vivian. The company said they were back. Vivian immediately ran to her aunt and told her how much she missed her. However, Yu Ho held the girl back and grabbed her to stop her from pouncing on her aunt. She said she was so fat she could crush her with her weight. Vivian said she was just jealous of their closeness. Yuho was surprised by her friend's statement and asked why she should be jealous of such a little girl. The girl said who is she talking to and called the main character big-breasted. At the same time, Yuho said that she doesn't have the brains yet. Auntie Shan watched the friendly quarrel of her female pupils and thought that nothing had changed at all. At the same time, 11 years ago, the weather was as sunny as any other day. Suddenly the doors to the luxurious mansion opened. Outside the door stood little Yuho and Auntie Shan. At the same time, little Vivian was in the house itself and looked welcomingly at the newcomers. The girl immediately rushed into her aunt's arms and told her that she was finally back and she had missed her so much. However, the friendliness did not extend to the protagonist, and the girl was perplexed to ask who she was. Right after the girl noticed that Yuho was holding Auntie's hand, she latched onto that. She got really angry. She started to disengage her breasts and the main character Auntie and told her to let her go. And the smart girl said it was her aunt's house and she didn't belong there. While the girl was talking about how she wasn't welcome here at all, Yuho only looked at what was happening with an embittered expression. At the same time, Auntie Shan started to stop her pupil and told her not to talk like that. The girl turned in a counter-question. Why did she bring another girl here? Auntie Shan started talking about how Yuho had been through a lot. Yuho couldn't say anything, only stared at the arguing silently. At the same time, Vivian herself said that she didn't care about the protagonist's past. At the same time, the most important heroine slowly rose to her feet. Suddenly, the girl held out her hands to Vivian. With a light push, she shoved the girl. With tears in her eyes, Yuho said that she swore that no one else would dare to offend her. At the same time, from such a light and at the same time heavy blow, Vivian cried. Auntie Shan recalled this long-ago story as a warm memory and thought that even though they had grown up, they still acted like children. Immediately after she recalled this situation, Auntie Shan stood up from her seat. She approached the main character and told her that she was completely gaunt from these assignments. Yuho said that it's not at all like that, as she has even put on a little weight lately. Vivian said wryly at the same time, does all that weight go to her chest? Before that, Yuho swung and hit the girl and said that she was very talkative. At the same time, Vivian whined about Yuho being a very cruel woman. Right after that, Yuho decided to ask Auntie why she came and asked if it was because of the Don Juanas here. Auntie Shan coughed and realized that she had a long story to tell. The woman said that she is really here for that very reason, the real head is someone else. Yuho, as if knowing that this was the case, only made her upset, confirming her thoughts. Vivian was surprised that Yuho knew this information and asked if it was really true. Yuho said that she thought it was him at first, but then she realized that Jack, it's just a 6. She remembered the man clearly screaming for revenge for her, even recalled the man trying to run away from her. It all screamed of the man's cowardly personality. It was another 6 years before Yuho realized that a cowardly man like him couldn't run an organization as large-scale as Don Juan. Auntie Shan smiled, praising the girl for such a good analysis. In her thoughts, Auntie Shan only realized that the main character could be trusted more and more. Vivian was extremely surprised at this turn of events and asked if Amelia had worked so hard for nothing, since she had even gotten hurt. Auntie Shan pulled the girl's cheek and said that the girl lacked patience because she hadn't finished her sentence yet. The woman began to say that there had been no incidents this month, and it seemed Jack hadn't complained to anyone yet. At the same time, poor Vivian only thought that both women were hurting her. Auntie Shan squinted her eyes and said that the list of names that Yuho gave was real. Hearing that the list of names was real, Yuho tensed up a lot. Yuho asked how will the organization act, said they should leave it up to them. Auntie Shan said that she had her own assignment and took Lu Yi with her. She also said that firstly, it was to see how she was doing, and secondly, for the organization to hand over the work to her. They would work together. At the same time, Vivian and Joyful giggled and winked at the protagonist. Yuho immediately got up from her seat because she said that this task was too dangerous. This time she would handle it herself. However, Auntie Shan interrupted her and told her not to worry. You also said that even though Vivian is physically weaker than she is, she can disarm a cute little girl with her looks from behind her back and has successfully completed many difficult tasks. That even when she started saying that she wasn't nicknamed Two-Faced for nothing, and told the main character to calm down. But Yuho still couldn't calm down, tried to put her word in when she was stopped. The girl said to trust her and not to look down on her. With a wink to the main character, she said she was really cool. Looking at such self-confidence, Yuho froze and couldn't say a word. Pensive, Yuho smiled softly. Touching the girl's forehead, she said it was only a couple of words of praise from her aunt, and she was already sassy. So she said that if she failed, she would post pictures of her without makeup. Vivian started laughing and saying that she has a natural beauty and she is not afraid of her photos without makeup. Immediately afterward, she wryly said that unlike some, she didn't care. The main character was offended by such words of the girl. Auntie Shan said that she had enough today and they should rest since tomorrow and have to go on a mission, and started to calm the girls down. At the same time, it was deep night. The apartment of the protagonist was extremely quiet. The girl leisurely typed on the keyboard, dealing with all the documents. That it was deep night, the girl didn't even turn on the lamp for better lighting and kept working. Yoo-ho was extremely tired and she was already feeling sleepy. At the same time, the door to the protagonist's room suddenly opened. An unknown female voice appeared from there and called her by name. Yoo-ho turned around to the source of the sound and asked what was wrong. At the same time, Auntie Shan hooked up with the main character and asked if she was still working despite it being so late. Yoo-ho said that this case will come to Vivian tomorrow, so she's processing the information. The girl said it would make her task very much easier, for as Auntie Shan herself knows, she has no patience. At the same time, Auntie Shan took out an illusory handkerchief and started wiping her tears of happiness. The woman began to say that she resembled her elder sister more and more. An old mother could sleep well. Yoo-ho turned around from Auntie, said that she is just afraid that if the girl fails, she will be the one to reveal the mess, and she doesn't want that. Said she was only joking, and said she always quite copes, so you don't have to worry. She put the protagonist's head on her shoulder and said that she was still doing it. She also asked if the main character could really take care of herself, to which the girl said she could. Yoo-ho lowered her eyes and said that she had so much more to do. She squinted and said that until she was done, she wouldn't rest. Something said that she knew she had overcome a lot there, but hoped she wasn't haunted by the ghosts of the past. It said that if she was tired of the task, she should just let her know. The woman said she would be happy to help her in that case. Yoo-ho, hearing such a suggestion, called Auntie by name and squeezed her hand. Closing her eyes, the protagonist said she wasn't going anywhere. He started ranting about how if it weren't for Auntie Shan, she would have died in an alley somewhere a long time ago. Yoo-ho recalled the events of his action. The girl couldn't see clearly, and only heard of her mother asking what he was doing. Grandpa still couldn't see anything clearly, but she remembered her mother telling her not to move. As the girl's eyes blurred, she remembered her mother trying to stop her husband. Suddenly, Yoo-ho remembered her father's outstretched hand, and her vision blurred even more as she couldn't understand what was going on. Abruptly, however, the girl remembered how she had opened her eyes. She remembered the man who was her father sipping a cigarette and being naked in front of his daughter. She remembered her mom desperately trying to stop her husband and telling him to have mercy on her because she was his daughter. The mom talked about going with him because he should give her to him. The woman begged that she should go instead of her daughter. However, the protagonist's father did not even notice his wife and told her to take her hands off. The girl remembered her father taking her hands in his, and she looked at her mom crying. At the same time, a mom threw herself right under her husband and tried in every way to stop him. The husband himself started kicking the woman, and the husband grabbed the woman by her hair and asked how he could sell her, for he could not get money from an old woman like her. Smiling evilly, he looked at the main character and said that she was many times more valuable. With his disgusting lips, he talked about making a deal with old man Lee last year, and the latter said he would pay 600,000 yuan for her. While the man was looking at the main one, she just did not even have the strength to cry. At the same time, her father was thinking about the advantages of marrying a child who was actually the old man's retarded grandson. Unexpectedly, Yoo-ho asked for her mom to help her. In the same second, Yoo-ho saw a huge bloodstain. Turns out it was her mom who stabbed her husband with a table knife. With a smile on her face and tears in her eyes, she told the protagonist to run. Everything that happened next, Yoo-ho remembered as if in a fog. The man took a swing at his wife while the wife was telling her daughter to run away as fast as possible. A man tried to stop the protagonist and said he was going to the old man's house with his daddy. The woman stopped him and told the protagonist to run away as soon as possible. Suddenly, Yoo-ho heard her name, and with tears in her eyes, she woke up from her nightmare. Standing over the protagonist was Vivian, who asked what had happened. Yoo-ho, as soon as she realized that it was the girl who said that one, scared her. The girl asked her again. All she did was walk into her room. She didn't even notice and said she had a problem with her sleep sensitivity. At the same time, Yoo-ho put on her slippers and said that it wasn't true at all. With a serious expression on her face, Yoo-ho asked why she came here. The girl tried to hug the main character and told her not to be so cold. She clung to her hand and told the main character that everyone was calling her to eat with them. Yoo-ho was surprised herself because the refrigerator was empty and asked if they should eat at the cafe. At the same time, Auntie Shan told the protagonist to come over as soon as possible before things got cold, because she had made her favorite egg noodles. Holding out a plate to the protagonist, Vivian said that there really wasn't any food, so Auntie had to get up early to go shopping. The girl started hugging her aunt and started to complain to her that the main character got up without standing on her feet and was already angry with her. The woman said they should start eating breakfast. The main character took the chopsticks in her hand and started eating noodles. She thought about it and realized that Auntie Shan had become a second mother to her. She also realized that this year, Auntie Shan was looking after her more. Suddenly, the grandson's phone rang on the aunt's phone. The woman stayed from the table and asked who it was. As she left the room, she said it was really her. Pretty soon you're out of ears, she said she understood. She hung up right after that. Auntie Shan turned to the main character and said she had something to tell her, and it's about the president. In the meantime, the weather outside was extremely nice, even though it was getting cooler. Yuho ran on her heels and wondered what really happened. She said that normally Jianfeng would tell her not to go to work, but now he had instead called in on his day off. Immediately afterward, an alert sounded in the protagonist's pocket. Yuho immediately took the phone in her hands. She saw that Jianfeng had told her to appear on the rooftop, and the protagonist's face immediately turned purple. She thought it was the roof again, and as soon as it was the roof. She also asked if he wanted to see the fireworks at noon. She was very annoyed because the last time he had taken it upon himself to mess with her head. Stepping into the elevator and pressing the button for the 88th floor, Yuho went to the man and thought that she was only putting up with this because he was her principal. After stepping out of the elevator, Yuho was right out in the open. Her little hat immediately flew off her head, but Yuho didn't pay attention to it. She wanted to know what he was up to. A girl and looked all around and was very surprised. As it turned out, there was a helicopter on the roof of the building where Giles Gu and John Feng were standing. Yuho soon found herself on the steps next to the president's younger brother. The man was all wrapped up in warm clothes and was extremely happy about the arrival of the protagonist. The guy said that since he waited for her, he was leaving because it's very cold here. The guy wished the protagonist to have fun there. Asha Yuho looked at the president in bewilderment because she thought someone was deliberately leaving them alone. She squinted and realized that didn't bode well considering the information from her aunt. Yuho remembered their conversation. Auntie Shan had said that John Feng was not only the president of his company. She squinted and said that he was also the head of the floating clouds on top of everything else. What information, and asked if they were really underworld gangsters. Auntie Shan grabbed the protagonist by the shoulders and said that this is really true because they are a notorious gang. She started to say that this is very dangerous. She can't let her continue doing this mission, and she will ask the organization to cancel this mission tomorrow. At the same time, Yuho just said that it's okay and she'll be fine. Why for not crying? Auntie Shan said that she can't let go to let the protagonist get hurt again. Yuho started to comfort and said, and don't worry because she can take care of herself. The unexpected voice brought the girl out of her stupor. Jian Feng asked what she was thinking about and told her to get into the helicopter. At the same time, he leaned close to the girl. Yuho asked what she should do, averting her eyes from the president. The man said it didn't work, just wanted her to keep him company. Jian Feng was starting to get angry already and asked if Yuho had something against it. Patiently waiting for the protagonist's answer, he looked like a very impatient cat. Yuho asked with a serious expression that she would like them to have a strictly business relationship, and if it wasn't a business trip, she had to decline. Unexpectedly, Jianfeng started rummaging through his pocket and took out something. As it turned out, he had gotten the very same gift from the protagonist for his birthday. Showing the Lucky Piggy's keychain, he began to say that she had agreed to celebrate his birthday with him. He threw a present to the main character and said that tomorrow is his birthday, and did she forget that? Yuho caught the gift and said she still remembered. Averting her eyes, Yuho realized that she had dug her own grave. Jian Feng asked what she was thinking about and told her to get into the helicopter. At the same time, he leaned close to the girl. Good time a deep night had fallen upon the city. A black car was driving around the roads of Paris. Yuho just woke up in the car and asked where they are right now. Jian Feng said that right now about them in Paris. The girl asked if he had decided to fly to Paris for his birthday. She also asked if they were going to the hotel now. Jian Feng said that no, they are going to his cottage right now. With a smile, Yuho said that she understood. At the same time, in her thoughts, she was just thinking about the fact that the rich have their own quirks. The Ferrari helicopter, and now the villa. Quite soon, Jian Feng pulled the lever in the car and was about to stop. It wasn't long before the car came to a final stop. Getting out of the car, Jian Feng told his assistant to get out of the car since they had already arrived. Pointing at the cottage, Jian Feng said that this was the one. The girl looked at the size of the cottages extremely surprised. In the distance was a European castle, which could not be called an ordinary cottage. Jian Feng started to say that this was his Paris residence tonight. They would have to settle for that. The girl smiled softly and agreed with the president. At the same time in her thoughts, she only speculated about whether this cottage was not good enough for him. Jian Feng started walking towards the cottage and said that if she didn't like something, they could replay it all, and it didn't seem like she was fine with it. Yuho waved her hands and said that she liked everything very much and thanked the president. Pretty soon, the main character was walking behind the president and approaching the cottage. Yuho heard an unusual sound and only wondered what it could be. Turning around, Yuho suspected something. Opening her eyes, the protagonist thought there was something wrong with this place. Suddenly, Jian Feng was right in the protagonist's ear and asked what was wrong and if she wanted to look around. Yuho didn't expect such an action from her president and almost jumped up. She got excited and said she was very curious about something. Exhaling, John Feng said that they should go since he was here to show her everything. Yu Ho pointed to a glass building in the distance and asked what it was. John Feng said that this was his ecodome and said to pass if she wanted to look into everything. The girl asked why John Feng didn't turn on the lights. However, before she could ask the question, John Feng gestured for her to be quiet and told her to be quiet. Yu Ho was very surprised by this, however. Quite soon, she saw many little fireflies. Immediately afterward, the girl decided to shut up and look around. The girl opened her eyes wide and began to look at the wonders that were happening around her. As it turned out, a sea of little fireflies were in the middle of pure nature. The main character and John Feng watched this beautiful action, unable to take their eyes off. The girl started to circle around the fireflies and said it was really beautiful. Unexpectedly, the man said it was the plain truth, but she wouldn't be able to see them again. Yu Ho asked again which girl she was talking about. John Feng started to tell her that she was his first childhood love, and he promised her that he would show her a whole sea of fireflies. Suddenly, Yu Ho remembered that very action. The guys were standing around the pond and watching the fireflies. Yu Ho said that fireflies are very beautiful, and it's a pity they only come in summer. Xiaoxin said that when he got rich, he would give her a sea of fireflies. While Xiaoxin was fixing her hair, the girl she said that they should promise on pinky fingers. Pretty soon they made an oath on their little fingers that they were now taking an oath and it couldn't be undone for 100 years. Yu Ho said that John Feng such fulfilled the promise and she must have been very happy. Looking into the distance, John Feng said that she would never see them again. Getting sad, Yu Ho only thought about how it was like this. The man squinted his eyes and began to say that it happened 5 years ago. He said he got a phone call that day. Picking up the phone, police said the girl had been found. However, immediately afterwards, the police broke the sad news. Turns out the girl was found dead. Hearing such news, John Feng let the phone out of his hands. That same day, John Feng happened to be at the scene and decided to look at the body. The only hand visible was the one with the star bracelet on it. The man realized it was really her. He took her cold hand and regarded it for a long time. Kneeling down, John Feng thought that if he had known that they would meet under such circumstances, it was better that they had never met. John Feng started to say that the police told him that she was pushed off the cliff by a band of criminals. He said that her body had not been identified, but he realized that she was she from the bracelet. The man said with a sad expression on his face that it was his gift, and she was to wear it until her death. Trying to comfort the president, Yu Ho started stroking his head. She tried to calm the president down and told him not to get upset. The girl said that the one who had fallen in love with him had not really disappeared, for she had only come to the guilty world to observe him. The president thanked for the support of the protagonist. However, immediately afterward he said that he was no longer a child. The girl was extremely surprised by this remark. Realizing that she was stroking his head, she immediately removed her hand with holy equanimity. Yu Ho thought that this was exactly what her mom did, so she unconsciously reached out her hand. John Feng said that they should stop looking at him and told them to go rest. It wasn't long before the president and Yu Ho were in the building. The man said that he was Uncle Lee and he would take her to her room. The man also said that she needed to rest a bit first and he would follow her later. The man walked the protagonist to the stairs and said they had to go up. At the same time, the man thought about the words of the protagonist. He remembered her facial expression sharply. He realized that the same girl from his memories had said exactly the same thing. He remembered the words of the protagonist that so-and-so really loves him and won't really go anywhere. Eyes wide, the man remembered when she had told him that she would return to another guy's to be by his side. John Feng looked at the image of the protagonist and wondered if she was the smallest fairy. However, he took a closer look at her face and realized that it was just Yu Ho. Placing his hands on his head, the man realized that the little fairy we never acted like this. He also figured that other than hair color, they had nothing in common, and he couldn't afford to make the same mistakes. At the same time, Yu Ho thanked her uncle and said that she would take it from here. Right after that, the protagonist closed the door and started to sort things out. She wondered if he would come back later. However, despite what he's up to this time, and now it's worth getting a good night's rest. Immediately after this situation, Yu Ho spat on the bed. The girl said that she had already achieved success by getting so much information. The girl remembered the story of her childhood love. She thought that since he was so loving, when did he have time to become a playboy? She was already beginning to envision news headlines starring the president. It said that the death of his beloved had deprived him of warm feelings, and he was seeking revenge. The news item also said that, in despair, he began to play with the feelings of girls and became a playboy. The girl choked on such crazy fantasies. The girl grew serious and realized that no matter what he went through, he should pay for his mistakes. It wasn't long before Uncle Lee walked up to the president who was drinking a glass of wine. The man said something he asked him for was ready. Still being behind the man, the uncle asked if he really wanted to celebrate his birthday this way. The man turned to his uncle and said that it was indeed true. and he should follow the plan. At the same time, Yoo-ho was sleeping peacefully on her bed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Getting up from the bed, Yoo-ho heard the delivery man say that the young master had asked him to deliver a gift to the main character. The girl opened the door and saw her uncle there with a huge box. The man said that the young gentleman would be waiting for the protagonist in the garden in half an hour. The girl smiled radiantly and thanked her uncle. Yoo-ho took the gift in her hands and wondered what he could have gotten her. Most importantly, the heroine looked at her watch and wondered what time she needed to be in the garden. As it seemed, it was 10:30, meaning that by 10 o'clock, Yoo-ho should have been in the garden by now. Yoo-ho sighed and wondered which way he had decided to celebrate his birthday. Opening the box, Yoo-ho saw a dress in blue colors. Yoo-ho thought that there was likely to be a big birthday party for the president, so he gave her a dress for fear of embarrassing himself. It wasn't long before Yoo-ho was already completely ready. She winked at her reflection in the mirror and thought it was amazing for him to have such good taste in clothes. Pretty soon, the protagonist has already gotten close to the president. She smiled and wished him a happy birthday. The man blushed at this congratulation and covered his mouth with his hands in embarrassment. Immediately after that, John Feng approached the main character. He squinted and said whether or not he would really be happy or not depended entirely on her. Yoo-ho averted her eyes and asked why the guests hadn't arrived yet. At the same time, the analysis thought why John Feng thought that it was up to her because all she wanted to do was kick his ass to finish the mission and go on vacation. The soft man said there would be no one else, just him and her. The man invited the girl to the evening table. Yoo-ho considered what was happening and wondered. She didn't understand what he wanted and whether the party had really turned into a candlelight dinner. Pretty soon, the protagonist and John Feng were sitting on both edges of the table. The man said that all of his previous parties have turned into business meetings and he actually likes it much better that way. Yoo-ho asked what he meant. The man looked into the eyes of the protagonist and said that he liked a one-on-one dinner much better without the hassle. Yoo-ho averted her eyes and wondered if he was unexpectedly so simple or if it was just a trap. At the same time, Uncle Lee brought a cake to the table. Immediately after the men brought it in, everyone seated paid attention to it. Yoo-ho said it was a very adorable cake and told the birthday boy to make a wish and blow out the candles as soon as possible. The man pointed his finger at the cake and began to speak. John Feng said that this year, he had decided to give this opportunity to the main character, so she should be the one to roll it. But Yoo-ho started waving her hand. You realize she didn't expect it at all. She started to refuse because it's his birthday. Immediately after the protagonist's rejection, he showed her the very same trinket. The man said that since she had given him such a special gift, he wanted to do something special for her. Yoo-ho thought the look was confident enough and didn't look like he was lying. After that, Yoo-ho nodded and agreed to the proposal. She folded her hands in prayer and made a wish. She thought that since today was a special day, she wanted it to end well. Immediately afterward, the president of the main character launched into a slow dance. While they were dancing, John Feng asked if he could kiss the main character. The man blushed and asked if he could kiss the main character. Yoo-ho touched the man's lips. She said that right now her desire for a drink was much stronger than her desire to make out with him. Yoo-ho looked into the distance and said that it lifted her spirits. At the same time, the girl was sitting with a glass of wine on a swing and looking at the open sky. The man said that the wine had a very high degree of alcohol, and he was afraid that she would not get intoxicated. The girl said that today, everything was fine, because she was very happy. Therefore, the main character took far more than one sip of wine. It wasn't long before she was leaning against the president. The girl asked him when they would be back, because she had so much to do. The man gently lifted the protagonist's face. After considering her, the man said that he wished now that she was really just an assistant. It wasn't long before the main character was carried entirely by John Feng, for she was unable to stay on her feet. The girl reached up and asked why you can't shoot at the stars. The man said it couldn't be done because they would burst into flames. The girl was surprised that the man knew the riddle so well. She immediately grabbed his tie. After this action, she plowed the man onto the bed. Immediately afterwards, she asked what a tired man goes to bed for. Said he's heading across the floor and asked if Yoo-ho is seducing him. After that, the girl asked another question. What kind of horse doesn't eat oats? The man replied that only a chess horse eats oats and said she smelled nice. The man was just about to ask for his reward when Yoo-ho just fell asleep. Very quickly, she began to toss and turn across the bed in a future dreamless sleep. Adjusting his tie, the man realized he never got to kiss her. The man kissed the girl on the forehead and thought that she was the first one who had spent him drunk. After that, he wished her good night, because no matter what happens next, he will remember her just like that. The next morning, Yoo-ho woke up with an incredibly bad headache. She wondered who had brought her here yesterday. Suddenly, I noticed something strange in my room. A black jacket lay on the bed, neatly folded. Yoo-ho squinted her eyes and tried to remember what happened yesterday. However, it looked like she'd had too much to drink last night. Needs noticed a glass of medicine and a note on her desk. Yu-ho thought that Jianfeng wasn't so bad. The note told her to drink tea so she wouldn't get dizzy from the hangover. It also said that it was very cold outside and that he had left his jacket for her. Looking at this note, Yu-ho only thought that the more caring a man was, the faster people would fall under his spell, and no wonder so many girls fell for it. And not for nothing, Jianfeng is considered a SSS rank opponent. East Yu-ho came to the Atom kitchen to meet the president. He was a little surprised to see her and asked if she was awake. The man asked if she had had tea, and he asked her to make rice congee, because it was good for her stomach. Yu-ho immediately said that they had a lot of work to do and asked when they were coming back. However, Jianfeng didn't want to answer the protagonist's question and said that breakfast would get cold if she didn't eat it now. Taking the chopsticks in his hands, the man said that his birthday hadn't passed yet, so she shouldn't be in a hurry. The man also said that she seemed to like the cake from yesterday and they would have it for dessert. The girl took the chopsticks in her hands and wondered if he wanted to humiliate her. Nevertheless, the girl was ready for any situation. Suddenly, the ringtone of a call sounded. As it turns out, it was Giles Gu on the phone. Jianfeng thought that something serious had happened, so he immediately picked up the phone and stepped back. However, the voice on the other side of the phone was very nervous. The man was saying that something had happened, and he needed to get back as soon as possible. Jianfeng hesitated and asked why he was panicking since he had already been working for him for so many years. The guy said he is still walking around with his girlfriend somewhere, and the company is on the verge of financial collapse. If he doesn't come back, they will go bankrupt and go begging. The man got serious and said he understood. Even before Jianfeng hung up the phone, Yu-ho asked what had happened after all. Hearing the protagonist's question, he hung up the phone and thought. Yu-ho mischievously asked, did Jianfeng really become a beggar? The man looked at the protagonist, asking if she would be happy if he was left without funds. The girl winked and said what not at all because she still needed a paycheck. Yu-ho asked what they would do now, eat the cake or go back to the company. The man said they're coming back because he doesn't want to become a beggar. And even more than that, he doesn't want to lose such a cute assistant. It wasn't long before the company found itself in the president's office. Get the president of the board extremely excited. However, Jianfeng was in an extremely bad mood. He and the protagonist were walking down the corridor at a fast pace. No one knew to what extent Jianfeng was angry. At the same time, Yu-ho was only slightly worried. Abruptly, the door of the president's office opened. Jianfeng walked in there, followed by Yu-ho. Giles Gu started jumping into hugs as he was extremely happy that Jianfeng had returned. He was also happy about the fact that Yu-ho had also returned. However, Jianfeng pushed the guy away. With an extremely bad mood, the man asked what had happened here, and if it wasn't anything serious, he was in for a severe punishment. The man began to recount the details of the situation and remembered what had happened. He said that it is related to the finances of our company, because someone embezzled a huge amount of money that hit the company hard. They still can't find this person. Jianfeng sat back in his chair and realized the full extent of the seriousness of the situation. Jianfeng folded his arms and asked what Yu-ho thought of the situation. But Yu-ho thought about it, and very soon said that compared to finding the intruder and recovering the finances, she was much more concerned about the whole financial system of the company. After all, she was too easily bypassed. Exhaling at the protagonist's assumption, he thought to himself. Very soon, the man looked at the documents and said that he was most concerned about it. So she was the one to take care of it, because for her, he could be calm. The girl covered herself with a slight blush and agreed to take such a case. However, Giles Gu didn't expect to see such a product, and only wondered when the two had become so close. Suddenly, it was as if it hit him. The man beckoned the president over for a second. Right after Jianfeng walked over, Giles Gu grabbed his shoulder and started whispering something in his ear. The man asks they were only going away for one night, but he's already seduced her and he feels like Yu-ho has become more polite. The man was fascinated by the idea, and asked if the two of them had slept together. Jianfeng almost choked on his own blood at this absurd suggestion. Immediately after that, he started beating his younger brother for being so stupid. The man suggested that if he were to set up a gossip department in the company, Giles Gu would be the head of it, since his talent would not be wasted. Giles Gu only began to complain that since he had taken the job of assistant, there was no longer room in his heart for him. Suddenly, Giles Gu's phone rang. Jianfeng started to complain that the guy was making so much noise and he wasn't answering his phone. When Giles Gu picked up the phone, he was surprised because the intruder had already been found. Yu-ho and the president were also surprised by the same news. Giles Gu was actually surprised at this situation, wide-eyed. The man said he understood and was on his way out. After the guy hung up, Yu-ho asked where the intruder was. The man turned to the president and the protagonist and said that the case smells like kerosene. At the same time, a crowd gathered around the president's office and shouted at the top of their lungs. The lonely girl stood on the roof and cried. Giles Gu said the intruder is now on the roof and wants to commit suicide. At the same time, the crowd pondered whether anyone really wanted to jump off. People said she was the one who embezzled a large sum of money. At the time, someone assumed she had been cheated on by her boyfriend and sympathized with her. Nevertheless, the entire crowd realized that it wasn't worth killing themselves just because of that. The lonely girl stood on the threshold of the roof and called out the name of her lover. She sobbed and said she hated him. It wasn't long before John Feng himself climbed up to the roof. The crowd began to part in front of him. Behind the president stood Giles Gu and the protagonist, watching the scene. The crowd wondered if it was really John Feng, since it was about a person's life, and thought about what he would do. It wasn't long before the company was closest to the girl. Giles Gu started to explain that her name is Zhang Qing, and she has been working in their company for a long time. She is very capable, and she has a soft character and good skills. The image of an innocent girl holding the documents appeared before him. John Feng said that she had illegally used the company's money because she had been cheated by her boyfriend. Yu-Ho was surprised by this news. The girl squinted her eyes and realized it was another Playboy victim. John Feng turned to his younger brother and was about to tell him to take over. But who are you stopped him? Yu-Ho asked with a grim expression on her face as she dealt with just that. Our brother was about to stop her, but the girl was already striding towards the intruder. Giles Gu moved closer to the president's ear and asked if the girl was really sure that she could handle it because it was a matter of life and death. John Feng smiled softly and said that she would always find something to surprise. As the girl stepped confidently toward the intruder, Christian told him not to worry. The intruder only yelled at the protagonist to stay away. With tears in her eyes and arms outstretched, she said that if Da took even one more step, she would jump. Yu-Ho crossed her arms, said that she doesn't even want to die and she made this mess, but she only wants to make this man come. The woman said it was completely untrue because she didn't want to see him at all. Putting her hands on her head, the girl said that he was the reason she was in a desperate situation. She wanted to tear him to pieces. Yu-Ho was surprised by this and said he just picked up the phone. Yu-Ho went on to say that if she really hates him that much, then that's fine. The girl was very surprised at this fact and said no. She abruptly approached the protagonist and stepped back from the edge of the roof. The girl stretched her hands out to meet the protagonist, about to grab her phone. She was rapidly approaching the protagonist while Yu-Ho merely calmly watched her. Once the girl was too close to the protagonist, she only dodged her grip. Immediately afterward, the girl fell to the floor and cried out in pain. John Feng called out to the protagonist, however. She didn't expect them to be bothered. John Feng immediately ran up to the girl and asked if she was all right, and thought that her reaction speed was faster than other people. At the same time, the girl was grabbed by other people to prevent her from going to the edge of the roof again. The perpetrator only screamed to be let go. She then turned to the main character and told her to give her phone back. The girl kept yelling for the phone to be given back to her, and Yu-Ho noticed it. Yu-Ho exhaled and said whether she could see the whole situation. She handed the phone to the girl and looked at it with a detached face. Yu-Ho said she didn't even dial his number. The intruder became extremely angry with the main character and squinted her eyes. Breaking free from the hands of other people, she angrily asked if she had cheated. Yu-Ho looked at the girl with a grim expression and told her to calm down. She grabbed her hand and said she wasn't trying to trick her. Yu-Ho pulled the girl towards her, trying to hug her. After that, the girl burst into tears even more because she realized that everything was already over. Quite soon, Yu-Ho walked out of the building. There was a beautiful, peaceful atmosphere outside. Yu-Ho was walking at a fast pace with Giles Gu and was in a hurry to get somewhere. Giles Gu said the abuser is emotionally unstable right now and asked if she really wanted to visit her. Yu-Ho thanked the man for his concern, but her gaze was staring off into the distance. Turning to the man, she said that John Feng had entrusted this task to her so he could not worry. It wasn't long before Yu-Ho entered the building. Giles Gu followed her. The man thought about the protagonist's behavior and realized that she was too willful and thought that it was no wonder John Feng took the case himself. At the same time, Yu-Ho was standing outside the interrogation room. As Yu-Ho opened the doors and entered the room, the intruder only talked about why they saved her. The girl cried and surrendered to the question of really why while her coworkers tried to calm her down. The girl covered her face with her hands and said that her life had no meaning now. Yu-Ho found herself beside the intruder and sternly asked why this. The intruder immediately recognized the voice of the protagonist and looked up. She saw the protagonist looking at the girl's actions with rage. Yu-Ho told her coworkers that they could go and she would stay here. Immediately after the others left the protagonist, and the intruder found themselves one-on-one. The girl asked the main character why she came here and not casually to make fun of her. Yu-Ho exhaled and began to explain. She sat behind the chair and said she knew the feeling of being cheated. Putting her hand on the girl's shoulder, she said she could help her. The girl wondered with a detached expression how she would be able to help her. She asked if Yu-Ho would be able to return the stolen millions, or beat an explanation out of the man who broke her heart. Yu-Ho put her hand in hers on the girl's hands and said that she couldn't solve the problem of the stolen money. Immediately afterward, the girl was extremely surprised by the protagonist's action and looked at her with wide-open eyes. Yu-Ho was extremely angry and said that she could help punish that man. The girl was extremely surprised at the main character's suggestion and asked what it meant to punish him. Images of her lover appeared before her eyes. She remembered how happily they spent time together and went on dates. She remembered how her boyfriend fed her, and they were happy together. She also recalled an incident when they were sitting watching the sunrise. The girl is extremely thoughtful about what she really wants. The main character put her hand on the girl's shoulder and said that she was aware that deep in her heart she didn't want this. Yu-Ho realized that since she was even going to commit suicide just to get his attention, Yu-Ho sank into her thoughts and realized that such jerks not only hurt physically, but also psychologically, which was even more frightening. The girl asked the main character if she really knew the feeling and had experienced something similar, and said they should deal with her problems first. Yu-Ho looked at the girl gently and said that she would help her. At the same time, John Feng poured himself a glass of wine. While John Feng was twirling his glass, Giles Gu couldn't find a place to worry. Giles Gu asked the president if he was really sure he wanted to entrust this entirely to the doing assistant. The man closed his eyes and said why not, since he had promised her that. Giles Gu pounded his hands on the table and wondered if he had really forgotten about his own mission. The man was disgusted to think whether the protagonists had seduced the president in Paris. The man looked at the wine glass and said he was working on it. He then shifted his gaze to Giles Gu and asked if he really hadn't wondered why Amelia had taken the matter into her own hands. Giles Gu was greatly surprised by this question and really thought about it. However, he didn't see what the big deal was and assumed she just had some free time on her hands. Jian Feng said that it was because she was starting to act again, and as long as she acted, they had a chance to get what they needed. Yu-Ho at the same time looked at the intruder with her serious gaze. She held out a handkerchief as well and asked her to tell her about her lover. As the girl wiped her tears once more, said she would help him. The girl started telling her story of how they met on a blind date. You wrote some girl was sitting at a table in some high-end restaurant waiting for a guy. She looked at her watch and was surprised that the man hadn't arrived yet. Literally at the same second, a certain man came up to her and said hello. He said his name was Sung Tian and stood beside the girl. He asked again if her name was really Jiang Jing to make sure there was no mistake. The girl instantly blushed and realized she liked the man. The girl said hello and told him that she was really her. She realized that she had fallen in love with him at first sight. One day it was raining down the street. Even though the others quietly went out and opened their umbrellas, Jiang Jing had forgotten it at home and only stared at the falling raindrops. Suddenly, a man approached the girl with an open umbrella and said it was a great pity. Exhaling, Sung Tian said that he had already warned her that it would rain, but she still forgot her umbrella. However, the girl smiled and grabbed the guy's hand and told him that he had come for her after all. The girl recounted that the man was very caring and they soon got up to date. On this day, they found themselves in a restaurant and eating viands. The girl was there with her boyfriend and company. Jiang Jing said her parents' best friend was also acquainted with him. The girl said they had been in love for 3 years, and all that time he had treated her well. Yu-Ho said that she shouldn't worry so much. She said all playboys have similar tactics because they need to rub off on the trust first. However, the girl clenched her fists because she couldn't believe him. However, Yu-Ho was also surprised by this because the man pretended to be sincere for so long. Why didn't these feelings become real? Jiang Jing said that he had actually treated her very well before. Yu-Ho was surprised and asked again if his feelings had really changed drastically. Yu-Ho wondered and thought about what the problem was. At the same time, an unknown person knocked on the door of the room. Yu-Ho opened the door with a calm expression and was surprised by the people who came. As it turned out, there were police standing outside the door. 2 police officers to be exact. Yu-Ho was extremely frightened from this situation. Jiang Jing that this might actually be the end and got scared too. The man showed his police ID and said the girl was suspected of embezzling funds. With a serious look on his face, the man said they were investigating the matter. Immediately afterward, police officers entered the room and saw the suspects there. Jiang Jing's heart went into heels as she realized that it might be over. Yu-Ho is also extremely surprised and worried because she still has a lot to learn and she won't let them take her away. The man once again said they were in charge of the case. They then turned to the girl saying she would have to come with them. With a sudden movement, they cuffed the girl. Police officers grabbed the suspect and tried to drag her away. Yu-Ho got worried because the organization has rules about not confronting the police, and she wondered what she should do. At the same time, the girl was yelling for Yu-Ho to help her in any way. Suddenly, there was a sharp voice from the doorway. It turned out to be the president and Giles Gu standing in the doorway. Yu-Ho was surprised by their arrival and began to hope for the best. The suspect was already crying and surprised to meet the president in the aisle. Jian Feng started to speak so his Giles Gu could explain to the police officers what the matter was. Giles Gu scratched his head and said he was glad to see the police officers. The man said their company had already withdrawn the application. He apologized again and said sorry to them for disturbing them for nothing. The policemen looked at each other and nodded. After that, they released the girl from the handcuffs with a special key. The policeman said that since the application was withdrawn, then they were leaving. Giles Gu apologized again for the inconvenience. Bad police goodbye, Giles Gu said she had already left. The girl, having gone through a crisis state, could no longer keep on her feet. She was picked up by the arms of the main character and supported by her. Yu-ho said that everything is fine now, she doesn't have to worry. At the same time, Jianfeng approached the company and told them not to worry. The men smiled softly and looked at the main character. He said that since Yu-ho took the case, he would deal with the police. The main character thanked the president for his trust and said she was paying him back in full. Right after that, Jianfeng took her little brother by the scruff of his neck and said that they were leaving. Yu-ho poured the girl a glass of water. Yu-ho held out a glass to the suspect and told her to drink it. The girl in turn thanked the main character. With a sad expression on her face, the girl said that if it wasn't for her, she would definitely be taken away. Yu-ho smiled softly and said that she was thanking the wrong person, for everyone saw that it was all thanks to the president. The girl said what everyone in the company is sure she communicates with the main character in a special way, and he did it for her. The girl began to falter as she could not believe this absurdity. Yu-ho is angry because there's a rumor that she's having an affair with a playboy, and she doesn't even know about it. At the same time, Zhang Jing asked the main character what she was thinking about and brought her out of her thoughts. Yu-ho said that it's very strange that her lover has changed so much. The girl said it was really true and she couldn't believe he was not only cheating but getting her into trouble. The girl put her hand on the intruder's shoulder and asked her to think when his behavior began to change. The girl hesitated and said it was about a year ago when he first asked her for money. The protagonist realized that this had become a pivotal incident. Yu-ho gloomily asked if he had really started asking her for money about a year ago. The girl confirmed it and said that he had explained it by the fact that he had lost money in the stock market. Yu-ho asked if something special happened this year. Zhang Jing asked to be given time to think, suddenly remembered the silhouette of a certain woman. The girl got off balance, thinking that maybe that was the reason. The unsuspecting girl let the glass out of her hands. She rose abruptly from the couch and said she remembered what had caused it. Suddenly the girl rose abruptly from her seat and realized that she remembered something. Yu-ho interjected what was wrong and what exactly she remembered. The girl darkened and tears began to pour from her eyes again. Out of helplessness, she sat up again and rolled her head back and began to narrate. She talked about how a year ago they were at her friend's wedding. She remembered that same purple and white interior and the lavish wedding. But she remembered how the girl had been summoned by her friend. She invited her with a table, with the girl herself being extremely beautiful dressed in a red dress. At that moment, the girl hadn't yet noticed about her boyfriend blushing and waved to her friend. The girl introduced her boyfriend and said his name. Her friend said hello to the people. She said her name was Jia Xingxin and she was the girl's best friend. At that time, the guy started to stammer, however, he still said hello to her friend. The man scratched the back of his head and asked if they wanted something to drink since he could bring some. Afterward, the man walked away from the company to get drinks. The girl moved closer to Zhang Jing's face and said that her boyfriend was very caring. At the same time, the girl said he was just being sincere. At the same time, her friend was watching the girl's boyfriend. She looked at his back and didn't take her eyes off him. She squinted her eyes and contemplated something fishy. The friend beckoned to the girl while she tasted the dessert. With a wink, she told her not to jump to conclusions whether he was sincere or not. The girl recalled how after the wedding was over, her boyfriend said he'd be worried if he suddenly didn't get hitched, so he added her friend on WeChat. The protagonist said that she understood everything, and asked again if his changes had really changed so much because of the girl's suspicions of cheating. The girl said that it was just like that, because before she had trusted him completely, but it turned out he had so many weaknesses. She recalled her boyfriend sitting on the toilet for a very long time. The girl was worried and talked about being in the bathroom for an hour and asked if everything was okay. The guy then said he was constipated. The girl reminisced about how the guy liked to hide in the bathroom and sit on his phone. One deep night, the girl remembered sharp sounds. She remembered waking up from them and walking downstairs. She remembered greeting her boyfriend, who was worried about why she was still awake. The girl recalled that he used to come in late because of some kind of work. The girl remembered them shopping and looking at the merchandise. One day, a girl saw a beautiful dress and asked him to buy it. The guy said he'd get his paycheck in 2 days and then he'd buy it right away. The girl was upset at the time. However, she agreed to it. Listening to Zhang Jing's story, Yu-ho silently pondered. After that, Yu-ho abruptly got up from the seats and said that she understood everything. With a soft look at the girl, she said that they would soon find out what had happened after all. It wasn't long before Yu-ho found herself outside Dan's assistant spa club. At the same time, Yu-ho, wearing sunglasses, was looking at her phone. Pulling away from him and looking up, Yu-ho smiled softly. At Zverev's location, Yu-ho realized that she was in the right place. At the same time, the main character was extremely beautifully dressed. She approached a female co-worker while the latter marveled about the beauty of the main character. Yu-ho approached a female employee and wanted to address her. She lowered her sunglasses slightly and turned to the girl. Yu-ho said as she walked over to Jia Xinxin, taking off her glasses. The girl smiled softly and said she had an appointment with her. At the same time, the employee asked the name of the person to whom the protagonist was addressing. The protagonist only looked at the employee in bewilderment. With excitement, the employee said she had quit a week ago. The girl asked what the protagonist thought of the suggestion that she be accepted by another beautician. The girl hesitated, but still agreed to the employee's suggestion. The girl was about to leave and apologize for disturbing them. Yu-Ho, in her thoughts, once again analyzed the information because if she quit, then Yu-Ho didn't come here for nothing. A coworker stared back at the incoming protagonist. She exhaled and said that even such a beautiful girl wanted to become even more beautiful, and whether there was any room left in this world for simpletons. Pretty soon, and most importantly, the heroine was at the spa being serviced by another female employee. She said her skin is in very good condition. Yu-Ho said that she's flattered by her because Shin used to tell her that she doesn't take care of her enough. Said she was tricking the protagonist into signing up for their card. But now she's getting rich, not like them. The main thing opened her eyes and asked if it was true, because she looked very ordinary. The employee said that it is really true because their salary and ability are almost the same. But she still allowed herself luxurious things, and also wear expensive brands every day. The girl closed her eyes and said that her family must be very well off then. A coworker said if Ta was from a rich family, why would she work here? And did she really want to experience life? 3 hours later, Yu-Ho walked out of the spa. She reapplied her sunglasses and surveyed her surroundings. With a calm gait, she walked to the car. The girl finally realized what was wrong. Meanwhile, at the president's residence, Giles Gu couldn't find anything to occupy himself with. Suddenly, he turned to the president and said that he felt that Yu-Ho was not at all interested in the investigation, because she went to the beautician in the morning. At the same time, John Feng was reviewing important documents and holding a glass of wine. The man looked at his younger brother and said something still won't give an estimate of her abilities. Giles Gu crossed his arms and said that he still doesn't understand since she is so stubborn. Yes, also women and what John Feng goes to appreciate. The man raised his glass of wine and offered a wager as to which of them would complete the task faster. Giles Gu rejoiced at the news and told the president to be an honest judge. The man walked briskly out of the president's office and was about to get down to business. Bringing the vocals closer to his lips, John Feng only thought that the main character should not disappoint him. At the same time, Yu-Ho was in a coffee shop. Jiang Jing sharply slammed her fist on the table in bewilderment. She asked the protagonist if her friend had really quit her job a week ago, and that time coincides with when the boyfriend disappeared. Yu-Ho said that on top of that, her friend also started wearing branded items just after meeting the girl's lover. The girl could not say a word and cried again. She lowered her eyes and said that her friend's family was not rich at all. Looking out the window, she realized there was only one explanation for all this. The girl frowned as she thought about what was happening. Unable to bear it, she closed her eyes. She remembered her boyfriend urging the girl to help him. Jiang Jing either talked about how she couldn't help him because how could she do this to the company? The guy hugged the girl and told her that if he didn't repay the full amount and he would be screwed and she would never see him again. The girl turned to her lover and said that embezzling funds from the company was against the law. The guy with a grim look on his face said that as soon as the transaction was successfully completed, he would immediately return that money. The man hugged Jiang Jing, kissing her on the top of her head and told her not to worry. At the same time in the restaurant, the girl burst into tears because how could he simultaneously deceive her to pass against the law and on this money to support his mistress? The protagonist held out the girl's handkerchief and looked at her sympathetically. Yu-Ho said that under these circumstances, is she really willing to still forgive him? The girl shuddered at this question, still sobbing. The girl wiped her tears and said a clear no. With a furious look on her face, she said that she was already just wishing these dogs would just die. Yu-Ho was surprised by this attitude of the girl, however. She did not say anything. At the same time as Jiang Jing's tears, she was only left wondering what she could do. Yu-Ho touched the girl's hand, trying to calm her down. Yu-Ho said with a serious expression that she would help her. At the same time, in her thoughts, Yu-Ho was as enraged as the girl herself and only thought that there was no forgiveness for all these freaks. At the same time in the car, Yu-Ho asked Vivian to punch in one seat for her, and she mailed her the information already. The girl was surprised that Yu-Ho remembered her and started talking about how much she missed her. However, Yu-Ho was unwilling to listen to this and told her to get busy. Vivian only innocently said that it was very rude of the main character. However, it wasn't long before she smiled and said she had already discounted everything to her. Literally at the same moment, a message arrived on the protagonist's phone. Looking at him, Yu-Ho only smiled and realized that that was where he was hiding and was surprised that he really knew how to enjoy life.